Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show here on the line. I'm Matt. Joining me is Eric. How you doing, man?
Hey, Matt. Doing pretty good.
You have survived since your excursion to the eclipse.
Yeah, that was an awesome trip. But yeah, no, made it back just fine and getting into the roll of things. Missing some of that awesome food. Man, that taco shack you guys recommended was just amazing. So I've been kind of dreaming about that nightly ever since I got back. Yeah, looking for my return trip one day for LineCon.
Torchy's Tacos, yeah. By the way, this is the Sunday show here on the line where primarily we focus on the claims of religions. And so if you're someone who advocates for God belief, think you can demonstrate it, by all means, get your calls in right now. We have all lines open. And the way we normally do this is that we try to reserve, atheists can call in, and by all means, you can do that and ask questions or talk about, your engagements with theists or however you want to do it. But we also keep lines specifically open for any theistic callers. So if you're getting a busy signal or you're not able to get through, by the way, you can call that number at the bottom of your screen, 720-619-2288, as soon as there's actually a number at the bottom of your screen. But also down below the description, there is a link to the web call in as well. When you call in, if you're getting a busy signal, that means that we actually have theists on the line, and we should be getting them or getting to them as quickly as we can. If you're not getting a busy signal, then you should go ahead and let it ring, and then the call screener will take your call, and we'll get you queued up to actually be a caller on the show. Couple reminders for people who are going to call in. Genuinely, the target is not for this to be, hostile, in your face, yelling back and forth. Does it happen? You bet. There are delays related to the phone lines that are difficult. We may have to put people on hold to get clarity. If we're asking questions, it's either to make a very specific point or to get clarification on what it is that you're actually advocating for. Because one of the big issues is that a lot of us think, because we use the same language, we say the word God or spiritual or evidence or anything like that because I have an understanding of what those words mean and you have an understanding of what those words mean, we often make the mistake of thinking that our understanding of what those words mean is the same. And remember that, first of all, words have usage, not intrinsic meaning, but it's not a big deal. We'll be here for a couple hours, and it's really easy to pause and say, let's define some terms. Let's get some information going here. Let's make sure that we're kind of on the same page as we do this. So 720-619-2288. Eric, what have you been working on lately?
Nothing much. I have a couple of video scripts that I've been working on. One is I'm going to be probably entitling The Lie of Christian Objective Morality, which I've been given some thought about, mainly since my collaboration with Paulogia a couple weeks ago, where we took on a Sean McDowell video where he was taking on the atheist 10 commandments, which, in reality, they were non-commandments by some fellows who wrote a book. But anyway, in that video, he was harping so much on, where does this moral goal come from? How is this not, just simply subjective to human views? So anyway, I got some ideas based off of that video. I'm putting together a script on that. And yeah, other than that, just doing some live streams. We did the RFR fundraiser yesterday, and that was really fun. It was fun to watch. It was amazing how much cash we got together for a good charity. And yeah, so that's just what I've been up to. Yeah, just chugging along.
I'm actually calling our number.
Trying to see if it works.
It does work. There we go.
Yep. See a call there.
That's what it was. That was me. The call screener's probably wondering what's going on. Yes, this weekend was the fundraiser for Recovering from Religion. For those of you who aren't aware of Recovering from Religion, you can go to recoveringfromreligion.org. But it is a nonprofit organization that's focused on people going through deconstruction periods, trying to understand how to deal with the questions of potentially losing their faith or giving up their religion or having it challenged in ways that they're not used to. As we, you guys have watched the call-in shows that we've done, the debates that we've done over the years. And as that content begins to spread, as there's more and more secular content on the internet, that means that individual churchgoers and people who are engaged or involved with one religion or another are more likely to come across shows like this, call-in shows and interactive shows where it may be the case that they're going to be hearing objections to their religion for the first time ever. They're potentially going to hear things that they know to be untrue or that aren't necessarily consistent with their understanding of their religion. Because the truth is that while, I read the Bible multiple times before I ever became a non-believer, there are people who don't know it particularly well, don't know the history of it particularly well. They know what they've been taught in church at different times. And so hearing these discussions, one of the things is if they're not the person on the phone, they have the advantage of having the arguments and ideas that they hold to and that they generally would offer being defended by somebody else. And so they're in the comfortable position of not being directly in the spotlight, directly into the gun. And yet they're still in the uncomfortable position of having the answers that they thought were good answers exposed as not so good answers. And throughout this process, what it means is that there are people who are going to find themselves dealing with the possibility of no longer believing the religion that they grew up with, or the religion they were indoctrinated to, or the religion they converted to later in life. They're going to reach a point where I'm not sure what I believe. I'm not sure how to address this. I'm not sure where the evidence is. And the fact that that is so consistent, I think, falls into the line of divine hiddenness arguments. Why isn't a God actually actively helping these people who genuinely only want to reaffirm their faith or confirm that what they believe is real? And so if their God's is not involved at all and isn't helping them, they're going to need somebody to help. Now, Recovering from Religion does not argue with or try to talk people out of their religious faith. They're just there to have the conversations and point them towards resources. They have trained volunteers that know that their job's not to argue. So while you can donate, and yesterday we raised 66,000. I think we're at 66,800. The fundraiser is going to continue. I mean, we basically hit every goal and then some. We had an initial goal of $35,000, which we knew was low based on how much we raised last year for Recovering Religion. We knew that was low, but there's so much concern about, the economy, despite the fact that almost every measure of the economy, it's outstanding, as long as you don't, look at the interest rate right now. But on that front, we want to make sure we weren't tapping people. You guys were exceptional in between Wednesday and Friday. My Wednesday night show, The Hang Up, and the Friday night, because I wanted that Forrest and Jimmy and I did for this fundraiser. We raised $20,000 by the end of Friday, and then we did basically the 9 hours and some change live yesterday. Was so much fun with lots of different guests on there, and we made it over the 35,000 mark in almost no time. We set the new goal to 50,000. We got over the 50,000 mark at no time. And then we didn't even raise the goal. We just were like, you know what? We've already bumped it up. We've already hit the goal. Let's see what we can do. And we had a number of people that were engaged in some matching funds. Because we got over the 40,000 mark, I will be getting a tattoo. I don't know. I know Arden has a copy of it. I don't know if Amargan has the image of the cat they're ready to pull up, but I do. So
I'm glad finally see that happening. I think you guys mentioned this cat that Seth drew like over a year ago. I remember seeing it on a different stream like a long time ago and talk about, yeah, there you go. That's going to be on Matt's body one day, guys. That's a piece
And I'm
of
going to
art.
do it signature and all. I'm not going to say where I'm getting it tattooed just yet. I'm going to go out and talk to a guy this week to see if I can get it done this week, so to be ready for next week's show. But that's a drawing by Seth Andrews of cat. Originally, I was not going to get the signature done. I was going to have Seth come down and get a tattoo gun put into Seth's hand and have him actually sign it on me. But I figured Seth would probably say no to that, to having never messed with a tattoo gun at all and not knowing anything about it.
Tattoo artists need a license, though, right? Like you can't just quite put a gun. Like, I mean, if you want to do it legally, you can't put a gun in somebody's hand and say, "Yeah, tattoo me." Can you? I don't know.
You can.
Barbers need licenses.
You can if it's for free. Just like my mom can cut my hair without a license.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's different if you're opening a business. You need a license to run a business like that. And so we raised $40,000, which is why I've got the tattoo coming. We hit the $65,000 mark in the last hour, which is why I ended up free handling a snake that was almost guaranteed to bite. Matter of fact, when I opened her enclosure, she came launching out, mouth agape, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to get her in on the show." And as much as it sucks, because it's not incredibly painful, but it's still a little painful and annoying, and I don't want to stress the snake out, and I'm not looking to get bit. What we are doing is, as I mentioned last night, we're working with this particular snake to make her more accustomed to handling, so that she's not as defensively bitey. Snakes aren't aggressive, but they do get defensive. She was so defensive, she wrapped up on the glove. It took me ages just to get my hand out of the glove to where I could sit here and hold her bare hand. But she never bit because she was focused on nothing but being in a ball around that glove. So I didn't get bit, and it's literally the first time in probably a year that I've free handled her at all without getting bit. But
progress.
We hit up over 65,000. And it's good money raised. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I think it was. I think yesterday the final value was like 66,800 something. I remember there was some jubilation in the chat about hitting all sixes, passing that part. But yeah, no, I think it was a great live stream. It's a great charity because I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I mentioned it before as well. I'm actually very envious of deconverts who said they stop themselves in their tracks and then they logically talk themselves out of their religion. I think that's great. I'm very encouraged to see people who do that. There are those of us, though, myself included, where I was never given the tools needed to do that when I was back in my religion. I was denied college. I was denied any type of education on logic and philosophy and critical thinking and reasoning. And on top of that, once you leave a organization like the Jehovah's Witnesses or other, Christian cults, that organization then pulls the rug out from under you and completely removes your social circle, your social support on top of that. So not only are you stuck without the tools, lost and don't know what to do, you now have virtually nobody to rely on. If you were like, say, a good witness and you never made worldly association and worldly friends. So yeah, the RFR is great in that they come in and they say, we are going to give you what you've been denied your entire life. We're going to give you the tools you need, give you the resources you need, give you support and that social structure that you need in order to get back up on your feet, pick up the pieces and get on with your life. So I think it was a great stream. It was a great cause and I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the one. Hopefully next year we'll see what happens.
Well, we actually have our first caller for the day. And if I'm correct, this is someone that I spoke to on Friday. So welcome back, Yeshua from New York. Pronouns are he, him. How you doing? Whoops.
Uh-oh.
Why did the call terminate just as soon as we went live?
Yeah.
Let's see if
maybe it was
call
an
back.
Accidental double click, maybe. Actually, no, to drop the call, you need to click drop call, then confirm. So maybe it was just a glitch. Call back, Yeshua. That was a mistake. We don't know what happened. Technical
No,
glitch or
I
something?
didn't terminate it. I said it live and they dropped it.
Okay.
So we'll see if Yeshua calls back. It didn't go very well for Yeshua on Friday, where he
Well,
accused me of hating Muslims, wouldn't retract it, didn't offer a defense of it, accused me of parting ways with the Orthodox progressive religion or view. I don't know.
Orthodox progressive. That's interesting.
Yeah, he seemed to say that I parted ways with the Orthodox progressive religion with respect to Gaza or something, because I'm not vocally saying the things that Forrest is saying at the volume and frequency that Forrest is saying them. I don't know. It was really weird. Um,
Hmm.
so Yeshua's call today, if he doesn't call back in, was to say that religious people live healthier lives than atheists who are degenerates. So I guess the first questions, and I'll just go ahead and get these out here now so that if Yeshua calls back, he can be prepared to actually answer these, is if you're going to accuse me of hating Muslims and not defend it and not retract it, I don't know why I should carry on a conversation with you. If your initial talking point is that atheists are degenerates, I mean, you're already just starting off with kind of like silly little name calling things. But if you're going to say that religious people live a healthier life, after you accused me of belonging to the Orthodox progressive religion, then clearly I also live a healthier life because that would make me religious. But I want to know, how are you defining healthier life and which religions qualify for that healthier life? So why should we bother talking to you? How are you defining healthier? And which religions actually qualify for that healthier life? We'll be waiting.
Yeah, I think I can note some marked improvements in my life once I deconverted out of my old religion. My mental health went up, my general life with like my decision making process, my finances, my long term goals, my actions, everything around my life improved remarkably once I left religion, because my whole methodology for determining what's right for me, what is good and not good for my health, changed. And they changed to become something more genuine and more authentic to myself. I was no longer trying to live my life by somebody else's standards. I was now living my life by my standards with my goals in mind. So, I mean, is that degeneracy? I don't know. Like if I was mentally unhealthy back when I was religious and I'm now mentally healthy not being religious, how did I how is that degenerate in any sense? Like, am I now not meeting somebody else's standards? In which case, why do I care what the other person's standards are when it's not good for me, when it's not giving me the health and the stability and um the tranquility that I enjoy now? Like, what good is an authority figure when what they're telling you is actively unhealthy for you, actively unhealthy for the world in many cases, because we can point to many cases where religion has made the world a much worse place. I'd be really interested to see exactly what that argument would have been had Yeshua remained on the line. I'm not sure what happened, but call back. We want to talk to you.
Yeah. And so we've got a test call right now. I want to put on real quick. Testing 1, 2, 3. Are you hearing us just fine?
I hear you. This is Cookies. What's
Hey,
up?
Cookies.
Yay. Thank you for doing the test
Just
call
wanted
for
to do a
us.
test call. Yep, no problem.
Rock on. So today is Cinco de Mayo, which is actually what Katy Montgomerie calls it when she dumps condiments into the basin in her kitchen. Sink full of mayo. Cinco de Mayo. Yeah. All right. It's a bit of a stretch.
As someone with a septic system, and it's very bad to put raw food in your septic system, that I just cringe at that, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't. I have to get my septic system pumped, and I got to replace all the bacteria and the microbes in there, and that just sounds terrible. Don't put mayonnaise down the drain in such quantities. It's terrible.
It's so I remember we had a septic system when I was a kid out, in Kearney. When you're saying you can't put What can't you put in there?
You don't want to put raw food down in your septic system.
What
Typically,
counts as
because
raw?
well, like just like stuff you put down your garbage disposal and stuff. In fact, up here they actually discourage you from putting garbage disposals on your drainage system because it encourages you to put more food down it. For the most part, in Washington we have a compost system where we have recycling trash and compost. So all your raw food products go into a compost bag, goes in the compost bin along with your yard waste and like fallen branches and such. And then the waste service takes it away. So yeah, for the most part, the only thing that should be going down into your septic system is basically water and human waste, because human waste is ready to be decomposed by those bacteria and microbes that you put into your system using those packets. And that's like a properly maintained, properly healthy septic system. You put a lot of food down there, it's going to throw the chemistry off, throw the balance off, and you can have issues where you have to get the thing pumped and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of a big thing up here, because especially where I live, we don't have a sewage system out here. So everybody's on septic like cleaning, and that business is really a big thing out here because it's all people have. And whenever you have your system clean, they go through the checklist about what you're doing, and that's what they tell us basically. It's like, don't do this, do that, don't do this, do that. So anyway, yeah, don't put mayo down there. That's like, sounds terrible. But if you're on a sewage system, I guess who cares? The city just filters out everything and handles it all anyway for you. Within reason, don't put everything down there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on a septic system. I'm just on the standard city sewer. Not that I would take a whole jug of mayo and dump it in there as well. So while we're waiting on callers to actually queue up, I have a topic that I was toying with specifically for a video, and it was a response to this notion. We frequently hear people just in general, and not just religious people, but across the board, saying everything happens for a reason. And that phrase, that saying, doesn't sit with me the way it used to when I was a believer. And I'm wondering if when people say that, we know that in the simplest sense, our understanding of causality means that there's, generally speaking, cause and effect. And so you would say that here's the effect, the reason for that happening may or may not be the cause. The cause, like for example, there's a fire, and it's because someone lit a match, but that might not be what they mean by reason. And the reason might be that somebody wanted there to be a fire or some sort of motivation. And so when we talk about things that apparently happen without any seeming direction, and yet they're impacting our life, do you think this notion of everything happens for a reason is, well, first of all, I can't rule out that you might consider it to be true in some valuable sense, or if this is either confusion or ignorance, or if this is a sort of comforting thing, like, the Jesus take the wheel, somebody is a guiding hand of this.
Yeah.
Because it seems that when we hear that phrase, it's almost always after something has gone awry, as a way to provide comfort, and it doesn't provide any comfort for me. I don't know if you had thoughts on that saying at all.
Yeah. So yeah, everything happens for a reason kind of loads in a purpose behind events in our world. It's kind of in alignment with, it's kind of similar asking, why is the universe here instead of how is the universe here? Why, or it kind of has like a purposer behind it, like some type of motive behind it. And yeah, I think it's definitely a coping mechanism. I think it's more accurate to say, everything happens for as a cause of something else might be more accurate, because then you can kind of remove that purpose behind it, that orchestration behind it. And I think it's just a coping mechanism for a lot of people, because sometimes things just happen, freak accidents. We see, people get hurt on the job because something fell off of a ledge above them, or natural disasters occur, or just simply sudden death occurs in some people because, of either old age or some undiagnosed medical issue. And I can definitely see the need for people to want to explain it, to want to put something behind it, where there's something as minuscule as it could be, something of value to come out of it. Oh, God needed a new angel in heaven, or oh, God needed this to happen in order for something grander to occur in his grand plan. It's reaching for straws, but it's also, it's like I said, it's a coping mechanism. People want to have it mean something instead of just, oh, this was just a random pointless accident that nobody could have seen coming, or this is just a natural event that doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, give us any benefit, but it happened. So yeah, it's it can be easy to fall into that trap to say, okay, well, we got to find the silver lining in the cloud. We need to figure out, okay, why did this occur? What purpose? What grander thing? What positive can we pull out of it? And I think it's fine to look at problems, look at events like that. I think it's fine to look at things and go, okay, what's the opportunity in this? This thing occurred we didn't expect. What can we do to turn this into something that's good, even if it's only a little bit of good and a whole lot of bad? But I think some people might take it a little bit too far and go, oh, there's something behind it. There's something driving this. This happened for a reason, because really the person's saying, I need the reason. I need something to be good out of this. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, because it really comes down to, like I said, divorcing the idea that things just happen because they're just caused by other natural events, or if that thing had an actual purpose behind it, some type of motivation, motivating entity behind it with a goal and such. Yeah, that'd be an interesting topic for a video, I think.
Yeah, I've actually I've got a big list of all the potential video topics that it just keeps getting longer. Like when I first started over 10 years ago, producing 3 or 4 videos a month for my personal Patreon, patreon.com/atheist debates. And you can go over and pledge $1 or so there, and you'll get all the videos early. I'm getting ready to do some live kind of premieres, including one on a proposed miracle healing. The video's done. The patrons have already seen it. I'm going to be going live with it and interacting with chat sometime in the next week, in addition to all the other things I'm doing this week, including getting the tattoo. But oh, by the way, I was just told that Cookies was posting the wrong telephone number. So if you're a theist out there that was relying on the number that I Got Cookies was posting in chat, that one was wrong. The one on the screen below me right here, 720-619-2288 is correct. The one in the description below the video, 720-619-2288 is correct. And so if that's what was keeping you guys from calling in, if you kept calling and you're like, hey, hang on, I got a busy signal, or I didn't get the line, we have now corrected that. So the right number is being put there in chat. Although I don't know why you're relying on what Cookies did, since it's literally, let me, you can't quite see my finger because of the lower third, but look, Eric's trying to find it too. It's just right there, 720-619-2288. Anyway, this notion that everything happens for a reason, and kind of dealing with the previous caller who ran away, which I understand why you ran away, Yeshua. It's okay. We batted you around like a chew toy on Friday, and you weren't sure that you were ready for that on Sunday, and that's fine. If you need to take some time off to actually think about what you're going to say and come up with, I don't know, good arguments supported by evidence rather than the kind of name calling trolley stuff that you were doing, cool. Take the day. We're doing fine without having to deal with that. But this concept of you're religious too gets tossed around, and I wonder if those two things are remotely related, because one of the things that Yeshua was saying on Friday was everybody has to have a scripture. No, you don't. I don't have, for all intents and purposes, I am my scripture in the sense that you mean it, or that you meant that. But I don't have to have a scripture or an external source telling me things. I am still going to be able to explore the world and engage and possibly find some truth there.
I think certain individuals, they are so wrapped up in their own worldview. They're so wrapped up in their own epistemology of, well, I have an authority figure in my life, therefore everyone else must have an authority figure in their life. That's how some people go, okay, well, I come to my knowledge based on my holy book or some authority, something telling me what's what. And they can take that and say, oh, that means everybody must have a system like this because I have a system like this. And I think it's very narrow-minded when somebody can't just for a moment take themselves out of their own box that they're in and go, well, maybe some other people think differently than I do. Maybe some other people think radically different than I do. I have no overarching authority figure in my life that just simply dictates to me what I should do and I follow it. I am my own authority. And the things that I do in my life, the things that I do through my moral system are based on my goals of human flourishing, my goals on reduction of suffering, my goals on helping others and securing, or helping to promote the security and future of mankind and having a healthy balance with us and our environment and everything else around us. Like those are the things that drive me forward. Those are things that I chose after I left religion. And my morality and my epistemology, where I come to my knowledge on exactly what I should do to promote those goals, those are mine. And individuals like, you mentioned Yeshua earlier, where, sounds religious, sounds like they're likely a Christian. I didn't talk to this individual. But try for a moment, Yeshua, if you're listening or whoever else might be in that mindset, think to yourselves, well, maybe the person I'm talking to, maybe the person, Matt, that I'm talking to, or Eric that I'm talking to, maybe they don't quite think like I do. And try just for a moment to put yourself in our shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of, okay, if I realize there's no authority above me, there's nothing telling me or dictating my life, how would I operate under that system? What would I do? What would be my goals? What would I want? And then maybe you can start to understand the position that we're in. Because we were on the side of the fence of having an authority figure, and now we aren't. So we understand both sides. Try your best to do that too, because if you can understand us and empathize with us and see where we're coming from, or at least from our perspective, we can have a more productive conversation instead of calling us degenerates and just, not answering the phone once we are ready to take your call.
Well, who knows what happened? They've called back, but I've already queued up Brett in Canada.
Hey, callers, nice.
Got in. Brett wants to talk about a potential issue here with whether or not God could have the ability to end its own life. So Brett in Canada, pronouns are he, him. You're on with Eric and Matt.
Thanks. Hi, Eric. Hi, Matt. Mostly on Facebook, Mostly on Facebook, I've been engaging with theists, and unlike the
oh my God,
God create a rock?
Terrible.
Can you pull the mic? Can you pull the microphone away from your face just a little bit? Just ease off the volume
sure,
a little bit for us.
Is this okay?
We might have to make do. We might have to make do. Just keep going.
Yeah, okay. So unlike the can God create a rock so heavy it can't lift, which they claim is a logical impossibility, I've been using, does God have the ability to end its own life? Whether it will or not, forget it. Does it have the ability? And I'm contending that if it does, it's not eternal, and that if it doesn't, it's not omnipotent. So as long as you don't include those two properties together with your God.
Why would it not be? Okay, so first of all, generally speaking, omnipotence is not necessarily a required feature of God, certainly not absolute omnipotence, just maximum power.
Okay.
But why would something not be omnipotent if it can actually end its own existence?
The reverse. If it can end its own existence, it's not
That's
eternal. And if it cannot...
Okay. Oh, okay. So if it can't end its own existence, then it's not omnipotent. Yes. So
because it's something humans can do.
If I put my Christian hat back on and you said, can God end its own existence? Yes.
Okay. So would you agree that makes it not eternal?
No. Because the mere fact that it can end its own existence doesn't mean it's going to end its own existence. It is eternal in the sense of its potentiality. God can potentially be eternal, and God can stop existing if God so chooses. There's no logical contradiction there. Plus, the word eternal or the description of eternal that's generally applied to gods just means that it has always existed and it will always exist. That's completely separate from whether or not it can stop existing. That doesn't change whether or not it would have been potentially eternal. But the God that I believed in when I was a Christian, nothing about your question remotely challenges my God belief at that time. Are you there?
My phone phased out there. Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate the feedback.
Sure. Oop, I don't know what's going on. I guess we're gonna lose Brett that way. But Yeshua is back, so let's try this again. Yeshua, pronouns are he, him in New York. I had all those questions, but I'm wondering why we should engage with someone who's making accusations that they won't back up or retract.
Well, because I believe those accusations, and that's why I wanted to call in to actually talk to you about what you believe about Muslims and why I think your position is inconsistent.
Okay. What makes you think I hate Muslims when I tell you I don't?
Well, that's the thing. So you can say you hate Muslims. You can say you hate Islam without hating Muslims. But when a Muslim hears that, they take that as a personal attack. And to them, if you're attacking Islam, you're attacking.
Are you a Muslim? How many Muslims do you think I've debated and had conversations with?
I don't know. You tell me.
A few? Because I have friends who are Muslims who don't think I hate Muslims and who understand that when I say I hate Islam, but it doesn't mean I hate Muslims, they're not offended in the sense that I hate them. They are offended on behalf of their religion that I hate their religion, but they don't think that I hate them.
Okay. Well, if that's true, then I guess Muslims are different than every other religion in the world. Because I know I'm Jewish.
No. Are you saying that every other religion in the world, if I said, for example, that I hate Christianity but don't hate Christians, that every Christian would think that I hate them?
The majority would say yes.
How do you know it's the majority? You do realize that you're talking to two people who...
Why are you such a pedantic little piece of shit, Matt? You're such a piece of shit.
What makes me a piece of shit? Because I'm asking questions that are too difficult for your pea brain to figure out?
Whenever you get cornered into a debate, you fucking mute people or you hang up on them, and you know that.
That's not true. I don't get cornered in debates. You're the one that's cornered right now because you're the one that's making claims that you can't back up.
Go ahead and hang up on me already. Go ahead. I mentioned Andrew.
I don't need to.
Go ahead and hang up.
I don't need to hang up on you. I can bat you around like a little chew toy because you're either a fraud.
Go ahead. I'm not hanging up. I'll let you hang up on me. I'll be here all day.
Yeah, you will. I'm going to put you on mute and just leave you on mute. There you go. Welcome to mute. But you also said that my scripture comes from MLK Jr., Karl Marx, and Pope Dawkins. So do you want to defend those claims since none of my positions are the result of MLK Jr., Karl Marx, or Pope Dawkins? Who the hell's Pope Dawkins? The guy that I've called out for being the guy that I've actually sat on stage with, had conversations with, had dinner with, and called out for being a transphobe. That Pope Dawkins?
Yeah, no, you've gotten all those positions actually from osmosis. Maybe you haven't directly read your own scripture, but you've gotten them all from the cultural osmosis from the.
How can I be getting them from Dawkins when I'm the one that's calling Dawkins out?
Yeah, just because you have minute disagreements on little shit doesn't mean anything. He's still your post.
Minute agreements on little shit is not how I would characterize. It's not how I would characterize going live to point out his transphobic comments repeatedly. If your case is that I'm basically getting my marching orders from Dawkins, and I'm the one that has been publicly calling Dawkins out, don't you realize how silly you look right now?
Oh my God, Matt, this isn't about Dawkins. This is just, you need to get over your complex.
I'm sorry. Aren't you the one who raised Dawkins's name when you were asked about my scriptures? You're the one that brought up Dawkins, right?
You don't even have a PhD, dude. You're not in their class.
You're the one that brought up Dawkins, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and
Let's talk
is
about
it
MLK
possible?
Jr.
And is it possible? Is it possible that the person without a PhD could be correct, and the person with the PhD could be incorrect? Is that possible?
I don't even know what his position on fucking trans issues is. Go ahead and alarm
I
me.
didn't say. I'm sorry. If you would focus for just a little bit, you'd look less shitty and less stupid. I didn't say anything about whether or not it was related to trans issues. I said, is it possible for the person with
You did actually say that.
No, I didn't. In the context of the question I'm asking you, stupid motherfucker, is it possible for a person without a PhD to be correct on an issue while a person with a PhD is incorrect on an issue? Is that possible? Yes or no, bonehead?
Obviously, you fucking.
Obviously, and that's why you're banned from the show, you little bitch. You don't get through again because you knew that was fallacious, and yet you tried to do this. Matt, you don't even have a PhD. You're not in their league. You know who's not in a league, Yeshua? You little false name, cowardly, fallaciously arguing garbage person. I'm now banning your IP address so you can do a release and renew before you get a chance to ever get through on another show that I do. Thanks. Have a good day.
I found that fascinating that, Yeshua, you're coming in here complaining about how Matt treats callers, and then you're practically being, like, literally begging to be treated that way. You're begging Matt to mute you, to ban you. Like, what are you trying to do here? You're just trying to make a point and then provoke Matt into proving that point? Or are you here to have a conversation? We could have talked about... Yeah, we could have talked about our supposed authority figures, Pope Dawkins. Okay, fine. What dictates does Dawkins give that I follow in the same way that the Catholics follow the dictates of the Pope? Name one. We could have had a nice conversation around that, but
it'll never happen. I'm convinced that person there is actually trolling for like TikTok content type stuff because that's what I was thinking too. I can't say that he's incapable. He's unwilling to have a conversation. He's unwilling to actually present an argument that isn't fallacious. It was, you atheists are degenerates. You just follow MLK Jr. and Pope Dawkins. It was just, it was name calling from before it started, which is why I'm happy to just call him names back. But you don't get to have any more conversations, Yeshua. So go find your content somewhere else. You can farm it elsewhere. I'd like to have conversations with real people and potentially real theists. And so we've got Mr. British calling in from London, pronouns are he, him. How you doing, Mr. British? You're on with Eric and Matt.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I am calling from the UK, so it's about 8 o'clock in the evening. I wanted to ask you a few questions about your beliefs. I am a theist, and I want to understand, where do you obtain your moral values from?
From empathy and a desire to make the world better.
I get mine from an understanding of how my actions affect the world and the type of world that I desire to see, and understanding how my actions help shape the world. And if I want to see a better world, I should perform actions that are in accord with that goal.
Okay, so just from the first gentleman who was speaking regarding empathy, and you use the word better, do you understand that is subjective?
Yes.
Do you accept that?
No, I understand that. Hang on. I gave you the short, quick answer in order to get the conversation started. I've actually done lengthy lectures on the superiority of secular morality. And I use the word better really briefly because I think everybody has this idea that they want to make the world better, but what I think is better may not be what you think is better. And so while it may in fact be a subjective assessment of what better is, the real problem is that it is not well defined. And so I proceed from a more utilitarian consequentialist view of not merely about suffering, but about the well-being of humans in particular. And because of that, there are objective facts about reality that we can discover about the consequences of our actions and whether or not those consequences are more likely to benefit or harm us individually or as groups, et cetera. So yes, I wasn't just throwing out a subjective
Right.
better. I was trying to get the conversation going.
No, I understand. Well, just let me clarify my understanding. So essentially, you've used the word utilitarianist and a consequentialist view, and then you've also used the word better, right? And actually, the specific word that you use was suffering. What is your opinion? What's your definition of suffering?
No, Mr. British, you weren't listening. I said specifically that it's not merely about suffering. That's what I said. You can't just pick out one fucking word and ignore the context surrounding that word. I specifically said this, and I know I specifically said, and I know I specifically said this because I've done this for 20 years, and because I've repeatedly objected to the oversimplified version of morals that Peter Singer advocates, which is merely about suffering. Which is why while I did say the word suffering, I was not in fact making an argument that suffering is or should be the primary consideration. Not at all.
Okay. Can I just respectfully request that we try and avoid the profanities to
no, you fucking cannot. You can request that I don't fucking use the profanities, but I will say whatever the fuck I want on the fucking show. And if you're too weak to handle that, that's too fucking bad. But when you ask a question and I give you my answer and you decide to ignore the context of my answer to say that because I uttered this word, you can then proceed directly on with your script, that's fucking bullshit, and I will call it fucking bullshit. And if that's too much for you,
okay,
I'm sorry.
I accept your position, but do you understand that as a result, I am mentally suffering right now, and essentially that's displaying your moral values, which is rather arbitrary. It's very arbitrary, would you not say? Because
I didn't
use the word.
So
and let me
it's
finish.
so strange. I'm not going to let you. No, I'm not going to let you finish. I'm going to mute you and I'm going to talk to you because you're not paying attention. First of all, it says here that you called in to talk about the notion of a necessary being prior to the Big Bang, and yet now we're talking about morality. That's fine. You can completely change the topic, but that makes you the one that's being dishonest because you had every opportunity to engage with the topic that you said you were going to engage with. However, I already noted that these things weren't necessarily well defined, but that if you define the foundation of morality as well-being, there are objective facts about the universe that are non-subjective that allow you to evaluate the consequences of your actions with respect to the goal. The goal may in fact be arbitrary. I've never said otherwise. And so you seem to keep coming in with like you found a problem with my morality when you've clearly only been paying attention to half of what I've said over the course of a couple of minutes on this call. You probably should go listen to the lecture that I gave on the superiority of secular morality so that you get a better understanding, so that you don't just look like you're coming in to de facto critique anything I say without giving it a second's thought because you heard a buzzword. Now I'll let you continue.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, that's why I said now I'll let you continue.
Okay. Can you expand on your understanding of objective fact of reality? What do you mean by that? What gives you an objective fact?
It is not a matter of subjective opinion that if I cut off your head, you will die. It is an objective fact that if I cut off your head, you will die. Do you agree?
Well, not necessarily. According to my standards, yes. If you come at me with a knife and try and cut my head off, yes, the likelihood of me dying is very high, yes.
Why did you say,
hello?
According to that, when I said that it was an objective fact or a non-subjective fact, that if I cut off your head, you'd die? Why did you say, according to your standards, as if there was different standards? Is it not the case that as far as we know, which means empirically probable, cutting off someone's head results in them dying, correct?
I accept that, yes.
then why did you make such a big deal out of this? The question was very simple. Is it an objective fact of reality that cutting off someone's head causes them to die? Why didn't you just say yes?
Okay. Because I want you to hold on to that whilst I ask you another question. Okay.
No, I'm still on this question. You're not the one directing the fucking conversation here, and you're the one that is being intentionally difficult. I asked a very simple, straightforward question for the purpose of clarifying the conversation, and you decided to throw up as many little roadblocks failing around as you possibly could in a short period of time. So let's try this one more time, Mr. British. You asked you asked, shut up and listen. You asked me for an objective fact about the universe that dealt with the issue that we're talking about. And I said that an example of that objective fact, or the non-subjective fact, is that if you cut off someone's head, they're going to die. That's a yes or no question. And instead of giving me a yes or no, you danced around. So would you agree that objectively speaking, if you cut off someone's head, they're going to die?
Yes.
Cool. Now, would you agree that generally speaking, barring some extenuating circumstances, someone dying is in conflict with their well-being?
Yes.
Cool. So if we have as a standard well-being, then you have now agreed that there's an objective fact in the universe that determines whether or not the results of an action are increasing or decreasing someone's well-being.
That is an objective fact. Yeah.
Okay, then we're in agreement. Continue.
Okay, so please let me continue. Now,
you know, Mr. British, I just
said
continue. Why on earth would you start with please let me continue?
I want to ask because it's difficult hearing on this interface. You know, I can't see you.
Maybe if you weren't doing dishes. You can't see me. We're live.
No,
anyway, go ahead.
I'm on my mobile phone.
I can literally watch this on my mobile phone while I'm actually on it. But set aside all that bullshit. Get to whatever your next question is.
Okay. So in terms of going back generations, okay, you accept that you were born. Do you accept that you were born from a man and a woman?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back generations ad infinitum to the first human being in this earth. Can you explain what your understanding of it is? You know, how did the first human appear?
We don't know exactly.
So there isn't an objective fact.
We don't know.
So you don't know.
Oh my God, would you let me finish a fucking sentence, you prick?
Okay, go on, Matt.
We human beings.
Really, I actually.
Oh my God! Welcome to mute. Welcome to fucking mute. Nobody's going to get to hear you until I decide they're going to hear you. Congratulations. We human beings do not have a complete understanding of the timeline of our history. So we cannot currently identify precisely when or where or how the first human existed. We know many things about our ancestry, and we can determine some of these by the fossil record and some of these via genetics, but we can't say exactly when the first human began to exist, or what we can say roughly, like 2 to 3 million years ago or something along those lines is when we would actually find and describe what would be the first member of of Homo, whether it's Homo habilis or whatever else. So
also,
question.
Sorry, Matt. There's also not a clear line between Homo sapiens and what came before. It's all a gradient. You can't, there's no like, oh, here's the line right at this generation. That's where we transition from what came before and Homo sapiens. It's the same way with like, can you point me towards the first French speaker, the first person who spoke French? Well, no, French gradually developed over time, over many iterations. You can't point to a single person and go, this was the very first person to ever speak French. That's not how it works.
Yeah. French and Spanish and other languages evolved from Latin, but there was never a Latin speaking mom who gave birth to a Spanish speaking child. That's not the way evolution and changes work. I'm going to unmute you now, despite the fact that you told the call screener you wanted to talk about whether or not a bet necessary being prior to the Big Bang makes sense. And then we spent time on morality. And then after finally getting you the answer that you wanted on morality for whatever reason, now we've moved on to let's find the first human. So you're kind of floundering here. Did we answer your question about? My God.
Thank you for unmuting me. Thank you for unmuting me. And I'm going to follow up the question by saying, so you do not know when the first human appeared, or as your colleague was saying about a fine line. In the same way, if we go back in relation to creation, okay, you're essentially, my understanding of what you're talking about, Homo habilis, Homo sapiens, the fine line between it, you're talking about evolution or the theory of evolution, which is not a proven fact.
Okay.
Now
stop.
I want to cast your
Stop. I have to stop you there, because the theory of evolution is a theory in the scientific sense. Scientific theories aren't ideas that people pulled out of their butt. They are the highest point of science. There's nothing more greater, more firm in science than a theory. The one of the scientific methods, or the models, is to begin with a hypothesis to explain an observation, and through testing to build up to the point where you then establish that this hypothesis is deserving of being a theory. When you say it's a theory and not a fact, you are betraying the fact that you don't understand what a theory is or how it relates to the facts. The evolution is a fact. It is a collection of observed facts. The change in allele frequency over time is an observed, documented fact. The modification of a genome to provide for the diversity of life is an observed fact. The theory of evolution isn't the theory of evolution. It's the theory of evolution by means of natural selection. This was Darwin's and other scientists' idea of explaining via natural selection what is the mechanism that explains the observed fact of the change in allele frequencies over time. When you present it as if it's not a fact, you are not honestly representing the facts, because the fact is life is diverse and evolution happened. The theory is our best understanding of how to explain how that happened. So continue from there.
You said evolution happened. Can you
Correct.
prove evolution happened?
Yes.
How can you prove evolution happened?
We have genetics is probably the strongest proof that evolution happens, but we witness
You're
change.
talking to a scientist.
We witnessed speciation, and we have the genetic record and we have the fossil record. To the extent that we can demonstrate that anything has happened ever in the history of the world, evolution is demonstrable, and it makes predictions about what we're going to find in fossil records in certain locations, at certain depths. And those predictions, like Tiktaalik, affirm that the model is correct.
And Mr. British, we could potentially throw out the entire fossil record, and evolution holds up. It's held up by the genetic record on its own. My favorite go-to are endogenous retroviruses. I think that's such a smoking gun when it comes to common ancestry between us and the other great apes.
But what's the point of all this, Mr. British? You were not muted for this.
Or not?
You were not muted for this. I'm trying to figure out what's the point, because you said you were going to talk about necessary beings in the Big Bang, and then you decided to talk about morality.
Okay,
and now you're trying to talk over me again while I'm trying to ask you a question. Do you understand how to have an actual fucking conversation with somebody?
I'm trying to build up my argument.
Okay, I'm happy to have you actually build up your argument, because right now you're floundering. But instead, it seems that you're asking us questions about what we can and can't demonstrate. Let me ask you this, and then you can make your argument. Let me ask you this, and then you can make your argument. If evolution,
fire away.
If the theory of evolution by natural selection turns out to not be a sound scientific theory, does that in any way add credence to a claim that a God is the explanation for the diversity of life?
They're complete. They're not mutually exclusive. That's my answer.
I'm asking you. Wow, I don't know why this was so difficult. You are challenging the theory of evolution by means of natural selection. And I'm saying, if it turns out to not be true, would that add credence?
I am not challenging the theory of evolution. Okay.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're asking us to defend and prove stuff. Okay, then why are you asking us to defend and prove evolution at all? Answer that.
If you permit me to speak.
Why are you asking us to defend evolution at all? Answer that. Do you fucking speak English?
You're talking to an Englishman.
I don't know that you understand English, though, because every time I ask you a question, you seem to say something else. This is real simple. Why are you asking us to defend evolution? Why are you fucking asking? Okay, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you again, Mr. Dickhead. I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to unmute you. If you answer the question correctly, you can then present your case. Why are you asking us if we can demonstrate evolution by means of natural selection? Go.
I gave you a succinct response, and I said the notion.
I'm muting you again, and I'm going to ask you the question one last time. Why are you asking us if we can prove evolution? Go.
If you let me give a answer without.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. Every time you're a whiny little bitch when I ask you this question, I'm going to mute you. This is really simple. I'm trying to see if you're capable of having a fucking conversation, or if we should hang up on you and move on to somebody else right now. And so all you have to do is answer this question. Answer this question, and I will shut up and let you present your case. Why are you asking us if we can prove evolution? Answer that question, please.
Because you cannot prove the theory of evolution, okay? That will result in me building up my argument to finally answering the question that I wrote on the screen. I'm trying to build up something.
So, Mr. British, we asked you earlier if you could somehow disprove evolution. Does that somehow add any weight to the creator God claim? That's why we asked that. Because hypothetically, we could throw out evolution. Mr. British, we could hypothetically throw evolution into the trash can for this conversation. That doesn't add anything at all to the God claim. So let's get off of evolution and just start making your God claim. Let's explore the claim itself instead of having to strike down competitor claims.
I have not disagreed with the theory of evolution. I haven't said I agree with it.
Did you just assert that we couldn't prove it? Did you just assert that we couldn't prove it not 30 seconds ago?
You're talking about speciation.
Did you just assert, yes or fucking no, did you just assert that we couldn't prove it 30 seconds or so ago? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why would you claim that we can't prove it if you're not trying to rebut it?
What do you mean if I cannot? Just by your own admission, you've said, I cannot prove the theory of evolution.
No, I didn't.
If you can prove the
No,
theory
I
of evolution,
fucking didn't. Okay, you don't understand English. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to leave this entirely for Eric, because I've spent 20 fucking years doing this, and I'm asking the specific questions so that we can get to the end of your script and either come to the understanding that you are the first person to have a sound argument that demonstrates the existence of a God, or you are yet another clown who thinks that disproving evolution would prove a God or lend credence to a God. But you want to either stay on your script, in which case you don't answer what we're asking, or you make assertions that can only lead in one direction while claiming you're going in a different direction. So congratulations, you've got me to tap out because I don't care to talk to you, but Eric probably does. And I hope that it goes better.
Hi, Eric.
Because right now,
Eric, thank you very much.
Why the fuck are you still talking while I'm talking? I took you off mute in preparation for you to have a conversation with Eric. And the first thing you did was decide you were going to keep talking over me. Do it again when I take you off mute right now, and I will return you to the queue where you can sit and fucking rot until the show is over instead of talking over me. You may now carry on with Eric. Thank you.
All right, Mr. British.
Thanks for tapping out. Hi, Eric.
Mr. British. Hi, Mr. British. Let's go ahead and just cut to the chase here, okay? Evolution versus creation is not a true dichotomy, nor is it mutually exclusive. So we don't need to worry about talking about whether evolution is true or not to talk about the claim about a creator. All right? So let's just cut straight towards the claim.
I'm not going to allow you, Eric, to direct. I haven't put
this is our show. We'll direct the conversation however we want.
It's preposterous for you to say what you are and are not going to allow Eric to do. So I'm going to unmute you. Actually, I guess Eric can mute you and unmute you whenever he wants.
Sure, I can do that. So here's the thing. So Mr. British, we have strong evidence here, I think, that you're operating off of a script and you really, really want to latch on to evolution because you think that's going to be some type of like home run setup for whatever argument you have coming. I don't care. Let's just say hypothetically right now for this conversation, evolution is false. We don't know where the diversity of life on planet Earth comes from. Just for the sake of conversation, we don't know. Let's not even talk about evolution. It's not even on the table anymore. Let's talk about the claim that you're about to make. Please make the claim.
Okay, well, we've gone back in time and you use the words bacterial enteroviruses. Okay, so essentially we're going.
No, I use the word endogenous retrovirus, ERVs. Go ahead. Still there? Did we lose him?
Evidently, he. I don't know what's going on. I didn't mute him.
I'll put some filler in here. Mr. British, you might be having connectivity issues. An ERV, endogenous retro. Yeah, there you are. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So what part did I cut out on?
You mislabeled the virus that I mentioned. It's an endogenous retrovirus.
Yeah, you use the word endogenous retrovirus. Okay, so essentially I'm trying to get Matt and you going back in time. Essentially, I want to ask my next question. Do you believe in the theory of the Big Bang?
The theory of the Big Bang. That's a weird way to put it, but sure. I think it is the most robust, accurate theory we have to explain the given evidence. But that is up for change. My mind could be changed on that with proper evidence and argumentation.
Okay. So then there comes the idea of, let's go back in time, infinite regress. Add infinite regress.
Well,
is a
hold on.
argument.
Hold on. Sorry, I want to clarify here. So the Big Bang is literally the beginning of time in our universe. So you want to talk about infinite regress, going back in time infinitely when the Big Bang theory states that time actually began. It doesn't go back infinitely.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
But what I am trying to ask you is, let's keep going back in time, there is this notion of infinite regress, and that would essentially disprove or would not fit in with the narrative of an atheist argument. In
what
respect
atheist
to
argument?
When the beginning of time. Sorry?
I'm confused here because we're talking about infinite regress, but the Big Bang Theory talks about the beginning of time. Time started at some point. So you can't go back before time started. That's a nonsensical statement. So I don't see how an infinite regress can really play into the picture here.
So what I'm trying, let's go back to at the beginning of time and space. Okay. What happened before then?
Did you just hear what I said before? We're talking about literally the beginning of time. So how can you have a before time?
Well, who created this?
That's a loaded question. The real question is, what caused this? And even then, that's probably a nonsensical question because cause requires time. Cause and effect requires some type of temporal transition. And if we're talking about the beginning of time, there's a reason why the Big Bang Theory can only do the mathematics and the physics back up to like, I don't know, a few like picoseconds before the actual or after the actual event. We don't know what happened before that.
Yeah.
If that's even such a sensible thing to say.
Well, essentially, you can, because you can imagine it. You can actually imagine what happened before time was invented, essentially.
Are you hearing that statement? Before time. Are you listening to that statement, how that statement itself contradicts itself?
How does it sound? You're saying cause has...
You're saying before time. Okay, Mr. British, does before and after require time? The concepts of before and after, does it require time?
Before and after.
Answer my question, please. Does the concepts of before and after require time? Okay, so you're talking about before time itself. You're talking about something that requires time, but time is absent for it. So how does that make any sense?
Yes.
And I'm perfectly fine with saying, I don't know what happened prior to the Big Bang or whatever, however you want to phrase it. I'm fine with saying, I have no idea. All I can tell you is that what scientists talk about what happened after the Big Bang. Go ahead.
Okay, before that's now I've got to the stage where essentially you've said before the Big Bang, okay?
I explicitly said that doesn't make sense. I did not say that. I explicitly said that doesn't make sense. We're using our imperfect human language to talk about concepts that may be outside of our understanding at this time. So I don't understand the point you're trying to get to here.
These are the words that you are saying. It's not me. We're trying to use human words to talk about that are imperfect, to talk about things we don't really understand. And that is, in my view, the definition of a necessary being, which, and I've said to you, I don't...
No. The fact that I said human language does not mean that there's a necessary leprechaun out there. Mr. British, hold on. Just because I use the terms imperfect human language to talk about how we're talking about the complexities of the cosmos or of the universe and possibly the cosmos, we may not have the terminology or even the concepts necessary to fully grasp and understand it. In fact, it's safe to say that we don't. But just because I use terminology like that doesn't mean I'm necessitating leprechauns or unicorns or gods. You are trying to front load your answer into the problem.
I need to interrupt for a question. I need to interrupt for a question.
Eric,
I need to.
I've taken you back in time.
Mr. British, I need you. Mr. British,
Matt,
I need you.
You need to be
Mr.
quiet
British,
and listen to me.
No, you need to be quiet, bitch. Now you're on mute. I'm getting ready to ask you a question. How you've now gotten to what your point was, which is about the concept of the beginning of time. I'm going to ask you a very specific question, and whether or not you ever get to speak again is going to be contingent on your answer. Explain to me how the discussion about evolution and the discussion about morality, explain to me how both of those were relevant to this discussion about the concept of the beginning of time. Answer that right now.
Thank you. In response to the morality question, I wanted to understand whether you accepted, and I actually drew you
I'm asking you this question one more time. I'm not saying, why did you ask about morality? I'm not saying, why did you ask about evolution? I'm saying, please demonstrate that the conversation about evolution and the conversation about morality were relevant to this conversation about the beginning of time. Go.
The evolution, I wanted to take you back in time. Okay? So I've taken you back in time, and that was my questioning in relation to evolution.
No, sir. There's nothing about the conversation about evolution that has anything to do with the beginning of time or the possible concept of prior to time. And there's nothing about the conversation about morality that has any bearing at all on the philosophical concept of time before the Big Bang. Is there anything? I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to ask you this straightforward. It's a yes or no question, and I swear to the God that you're trying to fucking bullshit me into. If you give me the wrong answer, you are done permanently. Is there anything about the morality question, the morality discussion that we had, that is in any way relevant to the conversation about the concept of time prior to the Big Bang? Yes or no?
Can you hear me?
Yes or no?
Hello? Matt,
yes or no?
You proved my point. You swore to my God.
Yes.
You believe in
yes
my
or
God.
no?
Okay?
Yes or no? Yes
Matt,
or no?
You swore to my
Welcome
God.
to band, bitch. I proved your point by swearing to your God. I said, to the God you're trying to bullshit us into. That doesn't mean I believe you have a God, you idiot. It doesn't mean I believe that your God is real. Jesus.
Sweet
Oh my
Buddha.
God, I just
there you
said
go.
Jesus.
Buddha's real. That was such a roundabout. That was such a roundabout a way to get to what was he's going for tag basically, right? He's trying to say there's something that has to be transcending all of time and space, and there has to be a being or a who behind everything. Like, we didn't need to go through the jungle to get to the tag argument. We didn't need to talk about evolution. Evolution on Earth started 3.5 billion years ago, and you're trying to talk about something that happened 14 billion years ago. Like, evolution has nothing to do with this conversation. We're talking about we're talking about the Big Bang here. Even scientists are having a difficulties getting as far back as the actual event itself. And you want us to talk about it and use this as some type of proof of God or not God? Like, we're not going to get anywhere with that. We're going to disagree over terms. We're going to use them improperly. And you're not going to be able to demonstrate that a who is behind it regardless. We don't know. Like, okay. I need a brain reset there. I'm going to take a moment to drink my drink.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I did a brain reset while you were talking to him, and I really appreciated the fact that you were incredibly patient in trying to get him to say, but it's like, it hit me while you guys were talking. He told the call screener he wanted to talk about whether or not the concept of a necessary being prior to the Big Bang makes sense to us. At some point, when you described something, he misrepresented it and then said that's exactly what his definition of necessary being is. And the thing that was being discussed at the time was neither necessary nor being. And it's like, if your definition of necessary being is neither necessary nor being, because it was contingent, the thing that you guys were talking about at the time is the only thing that I dig in on there. And so it was like, hang on, we had a conversation about morality, which can't possibly be relevant to time prior to the singularity. We had a conversation about evolution and whether or not it can be demonstrated, which also cannot have anything to do with the philosophical concept of time prior to the beginning of time.
Yeah.
You can talk about, you can say the words before time. Hell, there's a movie, The Land Before Time, but that doesn't mean before time. But you can say before time. And this is what Eric was kind of addressing. The fact that we have clumsiness in our language where we're going to use a common turn of phrase betrays the fact that there are some things that we don't comprehend and that may be incomprehensible. If you're going to use the fact that I said, I swear to the God that you're trying to bullshit me into, as if I've made your point and proved something, anything, I can swear to Lord Voldemort without believing that he's real. I can swear on the universe creating pixies. The point was, I used that particular expression in the hopes that the caller might take it seriously. That if in fact they are right and there is a God, and that God is going to be someone that I'm going to have to answer to, I will swear to them that if you don't answer my question, I will drop you like a hot rock. Just means I'm a man of my word, because now you're gone. So frustrating.
Yeah. And the fact that when you do say something like, oh, like I say sweet Buddha, I say, oh my God, I say Jeebus or Jesus, like just because I am invoking those words to express frustration does not mean I'm admitting those things exist. I don't admit that Jesus exists when I say, oh, Jesus, why are you doing this to me? Like these are just expressions of our words. And the fact that Mr. British wants to like latch on to those phrases and then try to strong arm us into these positions, it shows that he's not being generous. He's not being honest with us. He knows how we're invoking these words. He knows exactly what our position is on that, but he doesn't care because he's trying to push his script. And
it makes me,
it's so transparent. Yeah.
There may not have not only been no script, but I'm not even convinced that person was serious. What I'm wondering is, I just last week, we had some decent, reasonable theists call in and engage, presenting their arguments and evidence or what they felt was. We were able to have good conversations, no problem. Where are all you theists today? Why is it that the only theists I can get are a bigot who's trying to create TikTok content and a buffoon that's either intentionally trolling or is the worst defender of a theistic proposition I've had the displeasure of talking to in months, where you can't even stay on topic and you can't answer a single question. I'll make you guys a deal. I know there are theists out there that are like, I don't want to call because Matt's in charge of the hold button. Well, first of all, if you don't like that, you can apply to be on InBoss or any of the various debate programs that we're actually working on. So you can go to QAnon.com and there's an application form right there to actually get involved and do that. But I don't have to be involved in anything. If you're a theist and you really, really, really want to make my head spin, for the next hour and 10 minutes, if you're a theist and you call in, you can decide whether you interact with me or Eric or both. I will let the theists themselves, just so that there's no accusation about, oh, Matt this or a tag team this, or it's not fair in a 2-on-1, whatever, for the next hour and 10 minutes. And if this works and there are actually better conversations, we might start doing this regularly. For the next hour and 10 minutes, if you're a theist and you call in, just let the call screener know you're a theist, and you can let the call screener know whether you would rather speak to Eric or me or both. Because I'm happy to let Eric run the whole show and take all the questions. It will annoy the shit out of me and I will sit here and fume, but I can play chess and I can interact with chat and all that stuff. But in the meantime, let's take our atheist caller right now. Michelle in New Hampshire, pronouns are she, her, has a question related to whether or not her husband's an atheist. So how are you?
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm okay. I'm actually great that I didn't have to wait too long to get through. I have a question. I'm an atheist. My husband claims to be an atheist, but I'm not really sure. His belief is kind of strange to me. My husband believes that everything, how everything he says has a life force. He believes that this life force has no intelligence, no personality, nothing like that. But he believes this life force connects everything in the universe, that this life force is somehow this great, like what some people would call God, I think, but this great connection that that keeps everything alive. He likes to say, what's the difference between like a tree and a coffee table, that type of stuff. And he'll say that when you die or I die or even a dog or a cat, that when without our personalities, become part of this life force again. Just our energy becomes part of this life force again. Now, he believes everything like an atheist as far as physical creation and all that stuff, and he wants the scientific proof and stuff. But this life force thing, I argue with him. I say that's theism. It's just another sort of God proposition. And I just wanted to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, I
You
think
guys there?
yeah, just processing what you just said there. I think it really comes down to what definitions are, because I mean, atheism is, depending on the context you're talking about atheism in, you're talking about it philosophically, where atheism is the explicit denial that gods exist, or colloquially, like we do on the show, where atheism is just the disbelief or the lack of belief that gods exist. So you may want to clarify with your husband exactly what he means by the term atheist. Ask yourself what you mean by the term atheist, because maybe there's a little bit of a misalignment between the way you're using those words and the way he classifies what a god is and isn't, and how you classify what a god is or isn't. Because that's the thing too. Like just the word God is such a fuzzy word. Depending on who you talk to, even within the same denomination, the definition of God will be different, even among people of like beliefs. So you may be classifying the attributes of the universe and this energy field and very Star Warsy, Final Fantasy 7-ish. Like you might be classifying that, yeah, this fits my definition of a god, but your husband might not. So you may want to just get together and discuss the definitions of the word atheist and the definition of the word God. Get on the same page, make some compromises. If he's unyielding on the definition, just say, okay, fine, I will adopt your definition for this, but I need this other word to describe what I think as a replacement. And maybe at that point you can get a little bit of progress in the conversation and come to like some mutual understanding. But from the surface, from what I've heard here, he sounds like he does indeed believe he's an atheist, but he's attributing, I guess, these overarching magical qualities to the universe that maybe your typical atheist doesn't believe in.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of gets me on it is that there's almost this magical sense that this energy he feels connects everything in the universe, and that when you die, somehow you become part of this energy that connects the universe. And I said to him, well, why do you believe that without any, even the slightest bit of research or truth to it? It's just a belief. And I know that beliefs are very strong things, but to me it seems like another soothing mechanism, like something he won't let go. When you let go of the fact that, life is finite, it's still another thing he's holding on to, that idea that holds him on.
But that may have nothing to do with whether or not he's an atheist. Atheist is someone who's not convinced atheist is someone who's not convinced there's a God. There are a lot of atheists who have a lot of ridiculous, unwarranted beliefs. There are a lot of atheists who aren't exercising skepticism and critical thinking. There are a lot of atheists who buy into, pseudoscientific, supernatural woo stuff, but they're still atheists. So it seems like the issue here is that you're not so sure if your husband's really an atheist. He may be. There's a chance he may not be, but I mean, it seems more like you're concerned about whether or not he's a skeptical thinker, whether or not, he's buying
or
into
whether or not he's
nonsense.
or whether or not he's replacing this universal energy with a God, as a God.
Okay, but it seems like you view your atheism as being convinced that there are no gods and there's nothing godlike, and anything that even approaches analogous to a god is, I don't know, worthy of derision and whatever. Whatever. I don't believe the thing that your husband is advocating for, but how do you know he's wrong?
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, how does he know he's right? I think that what he really should do is say, or I can't tell him what to believe, but I think that instead of trumpeting this thing, maybe he should be sort of saying, I believe, rather than saying this is the way it is, and not just with me, but with other people. So, but after talking to you guys, I think I have an idea on, well, maybe obviously I'm not going to be confronting him as much because it's not worth it.
I was actually about to ask, is this at all affecting his decision-making process? Is this adversity affecting your relationship with him? Or is it just a kind of a disagreement over definitions and a disagreement over the nature of reality?
Well, it can be a little friction forming because sometimes it gets sometimes I almost think he becomes an animist because it's sort of like if this creation thing is in everything, then, or this energy, it's not well, it is sort of a creation thing. If it's in everything, then it's in trees, it's in anything that's alive. So almost everything in alive. Once he said all things are sacred, but all things mean nothing. I didn't get that.
It sounds like you need to talk to your husband.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to talk to him, but talking to him can be a little iffy. So
well, try to
anyway.
my recommendation with that is try ask clarifying questions. If you feel like your definitions aren't quite aligning, or if you feel like your concepts aren't quite aligning, do your best to meet him halfway or meet him where he's at. Say, like for instance, like I used the example earlier. Let's say both of your definitions of God are different. Let's say ask him, what's your definition of God? And then compare it with your definition of God. And if there's a difference there, then drop your definition of God, or rather relabel the concept of your definition of God to something else. Call it God 2 or something, or God prime. And then for the rest of the conversation, adopt his definition for the word God, but still hold on to your God 2 definition in case you need to reference it. And try to meet him that way. Try to see it from his point of view without, and you can do that without dropping your definitions or your concepts. And you can maybe unify the conversation and say, hey, okay, fine, for this discussion, we're going to use these terms, and even write it down on a whiteboard or something like that, or a piece of paper to say, just for reference, here's what the definition we're working off of. And once you guys get aligned on that, if you're both agreeable to it, then maybe you can have a more productive conversation.
Oh, okay. I'm going to take your advice. This sounds really good. And I just have to say, the joys of being married to a Reformed Catholic. And I watch you guys show every time I can. I've been catching up on back shows. This is great. Thank you very much. Unless you guys have something else to say to me, I probably should get going and not use up all your time.
Good luck, and thanks for reaching out. It shows that you care enough and you're concerned enough where you're asking for other people's opinions about how you should proceed. And I think that bodes well for the conversation in your relationship, because you're making an effort to reach out and understand better. So yeah, good luck. All the best.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, and really care about you guys. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Are you ready, John, Eric? Because you've got a caller that's calling just for you.
I see that. John, come on in. I might have gotten myself into trouble talking about time and before time and whether that's sensical or not. But let's talk, John. How you doing, John? John, Ohio. Okay. John, you're a theist, and you want to talk to me about the topic of time. So yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad I had a chance to talk with you again. I was wondering, how do you know that time had a beginning?
So the theory of the Big Bang, which is the currently consensus among scientists, says that time had a beginning. The expansion of the universe was when time began, or the point that the universe from the singularity started to expand, that was the point that time began. So that's the currently accepted model among scientists. That's the model that I accept because I'm not an expert on it, and I trust the scientists to do their job and to give us the information correctly. It could be wrong. The theory of the Big Bang could be wrong, so I can't claim that I know it to be true. I lean towards it being true because that's what the evidence currently points to, and that's what scientific consensus leans towards. So in short, I don't claim to know that's true. I accept it as true because that's what the current evidence and science bears out.
Well, what if a theist believes that time has always existed?
That's fine too. I mean, I can't dictate what they believe, and if they believe that time's always existed and they want to make that claim, then they can back that up with evidence, and I would listen and see if I agree with it or not. But as far as I know, your typical theist isn't more qualified than your typical scientist, your typical astrophysicist on that. So I'm going to lean towards the subject matter experts on that rather than somebody trying to prove a God exists.
Do you believe that space is limitless?
I have no idea. I'm actually very neutral on that. I don't know if the universe is finite or infinite. I have no idea. I do know that we have a limited view of the universe. We have something called the observable universe, which is all we can see. But what's beyond the observable universe, we have no idea. Could be more universe or could be not universe. I have no idea. So I'm completely neutral on that question.
Well, if you're not sure about space, how could you accept what is taught by astrophysicists as far as time is concerned?
So I'm sorry, say that again. Like I
If
don't
you're
quite
not
understand
sure
that question.
about, if you're not sure about space, how can you willingly accept what astrophysicists say about the time element?
I don't see how those are related, but I accept what scientists say because they have the training, they have the mathematics and the science behind it. And their claims are tentative based on the evidence. It's the same way like if we're in a court or a jury trial and a prosecutor is trying to build a case for a claim that somebody did a crime, they bring forth evidence, they bring forth argumentation. So I lean towards what can be supported by both of those. That doesn't mean I necessarily accept it 100% or I conclusively say that I know for a fact that this person committed this crime or I know for a fact that the Big Bang Theory is true. Like, I don't quite understand what you're trying to get at there. Maybe if you can rephrase the question, I can maybe answer it a little bit better. But in a nutshell, I accept what scientists say because they're the subject matter experts and they have the science and the math behind it.
Okay. Another point I wanted to ask was, what do you think will happen to you after you die?
Okay. When you clarifying question, what do you mean by me? My body, my mind, the person I am, like what? All three of those?
The whole shebang.
Okay. So the person I am will cease to exist. My mind will cease to function, and my body, what's left of my body, the atoms that compose my body will decompose, and those atoms will become whatever physics determines they become. Whether I become fertilizer for grass, or I'm cremated and my ashes are thrown about in a forest somewhere, that's what's going to happen to me. So the me, the Eric that I am, the personality that I am, the mind that I have will simply cease.
Okay, so you don't believe that you have an immortal soul?
No.
Okay. I just wondered about
because John, I haven't been presented with compelling evidence that I do have an immortal soul.
I see. What kind of evidence would you need?
Evidence that compels me, I guess. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, what kind of evidence would you need to be convinced that leprechauns exist? Well, okay, I need to be shown maybe a leprechaun in front of me. Maybe I can interact with it. Maybe I run tests on it. For the instance of a soul, can you show me a soul that exists? Can we observe it? Can we measure it? Can we draw attributes from it? Can we test it? Things like that.
Well, I guess I'm wondering about people that die on the operating table. They a part of them leaves their body, and they can look down on their body from the ceiling and see their body laying there. How do you explain that?
I've heard stories like that. My explanation for that is that is a oxygen deprived, traumatized brain malfunctioning. So your brain has a way of filling in blanks. When things are going wrong, your brain can do a lot of really weird stuff because your brain is trying to make sense of the world around it. And if you're in a traumatized, oxygen deprived state, your brain can do all kinds of weird things. So I don't think that a person's soul or their person is leaving the body and floating around the room. I think that's just their brain filling in blanks once they come back and they're more normally operating again. So I guess my question would be is which direction, or your question is which way do I lean on that? I lean towards it's just a natural explanation that your brain is just doing weird things when it's in a really bad state.
Okay. But don't you think it's incredible that they can give a full description of everything that's happening in the room?
No. Because, well, first of all, you have to present me with an example that we can talk about. And secondly, how do we know that these people didn't observe things when they were being wheeled into the room? How do we know that maybe their brain was picking up on audio cues from doctors talking about the room, or talking about, pass me that scalpel, grab that machine over there, hold this person down. Like you can see how the brain can fill in these gaps based on the scant information that it's able to pick up when it's in a state like this. I see nothing to indicate that a person's soul is leaving the body. In fact, James Randi, the late great James Randi, he had a anecdote incident where he had an out-of-body experience when he was sleeping on the bed. He said that he lifted out of his body, he could see the room, he could see the cat on the bed, he could see himself on the bed, staying away from the cat because the cats, how cats are on beds. He had an experience like that. And his anecdote was when he went to breakfast that morning, and he was talking, I think, to a relative or to a friend of his. He said, "Hey, I think I had an out-of-body experience when I was sleeping." And upon further investigation, the things he observed didn't actually line up with reality. I think like something like the pajamas were a different color, the sheets were a different color. There were inconsistencies between what he experienced and what reality actually was in that room. And that's because his brain was just doing something funny in an unconscious state.
I always took that as a joke from him.
I don't think that was a joke. I think that was an actual real anecdote from him. I think that was a real experience that he had that he was describing. But it's been years since I listened to it, so I could be misremembering. Yeah.
But,
so I mean,
go
ahead.
When I called before, we were talking about Socrates. Now, Socrates believed in the immortal soul. Do you feel that you know more than Socrates?
Just because Socrates believed in the immortal soul doesn't mean that immortal soul exists, and doesn't mean I know more than Socrates. So, John, do you have a doctor that you go to? Like, do you have a doctor that you trust and handles? Okay. So let's say that doctor comes to you one day and says, "Hey, John, I believe in leprechauns." And then I say, "Hey, John, you disagree with your doctor on leprechauns. Are you trying to tell me you know more than your doctor does?" Like, do you see how that does not follow at all, does not relate at all? Just because you're appealing to an authority figure and some esoteric view of that authority figure doesn't mean that that view is true.
Well, I always thought that Socrates was one of the greatest philosophers.
Does that mean Socrates knew everything? Does that mean Socrates was right about everything? Does that mean Socrates is infallible?
No.
Okay. So Socrates can't be wrong about things, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And I'm perfectly justified to disagree with Socrates about things that aren't philosophy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there you go.
So, but I would think that there would be more people that would agree with him than disagree.
Why should people disagree or agree with Socrates on the existence of a soul? What evidence did he bring forward that a soul exists?
Well, evidently he must have had something that he based that conclusion on.
Okay, evidently he must have something. That's speculation. Do you have anything concrete that he brought forward in his writings?
Well, it's been a long time since I studied him. I'd have to review the material and see exactly what he came up with. But
Okay, well,
he obviously has something that he was basing that on.
that sounds like speculation to me. But even if he did somehow write about it, which I don't know either, but even if he did write something down about it, that doesn't necessarily make it true. He needs to. You need to bring forward evidence that he wrote it and that he presented evidence, and that we can somehow analyze that evidence about the existence of a soul or not.
And Plato also wrote about it also. Now, can both Socrates and Plato be wrong?
Yes. Absolutely yes. Can we get 100 ancient philosophers that are highly respected, and can we get them all together and they all agree on something that something be wrong? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Just because they put forward a claim doesn't mean that claim's automatically true just because they're respected. The claim is true or false based on the evidence that can be presented to support that claim.
And can scientists be wrong about the Big Bang?
Absolutely. Keep in mind, John, scientific findings are all tentative. They are all temporary. They can all be, take that back, they're not all temporary. They can all be dethroned as the top answer, the top explanation for things as new evidence, new science, new argumentation, new data comes to light. Everything, including the Big Bang Theory, including evolutionary theory, including the germ theory of disease and gravitational theory and all that. All of it has the potential to be dethroned and put aside for a better theory once the evidence supports that better theory.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we came to an agreement on that.
I'm glad we did too. So I think John, one of the, I'm not saying this is the case here between you and me. I think we're having a pretty good conversation. But I think one of the major disconnects between most theists and most non-theists are that theists are usually in the mindset of, my God said this, therefore this is absolutely true, this is immovable, this is immutable, this is the case. And they have that mindset, and I understand why, because I used to be a theist myself, but they automatically think that non-theists, with their acceptance of science, with their acceptance and explanations from the scientific method, that non-theists are somehow also in that same position of, these are absolute, these are unchangeable, these are immutable. No, we are completely worlds apart on that. None of the explanations from science are set in stone. They can all be changed potentially with the proper evidence brought forward. Go ahead.
Do you have a system of morality?
I do, yeah, roughly. I haven't thought about it as well as maybe Matt has. Matt's given like whole speeches on secular morality and the benefits and the advantages of it. But yeah, no, I have a rough system for what I call morality. Yes.
Did you say that you used to be a JW?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how has your morality changed since you were a JW?
For one, my morality is, I mentioned it earlier, but before, when I was a JW, my morality simply came from not the Bible, but what older men in the congregation were telling me what the Bible says, their interpretations of the Bible. And of course, if you go up to the top of that ladder, they're claiming it comes from an authority figure, which is God, but God gave those commandments and those dictates and those principles in the Bible. And then the older men of the congregation, the governing body, the elders, they interpret the Bible and then they feed it to the followers. So that was my moral system. It was basically just divine dictate down through a hierarchy and given to me. So that was my morality system before. My morality system now is a more robust understanding of the world, how it works, the goals I have in mind about, my goals are in general human flourishing, reduction of suffering, increasing in happiness, and the flourishing and continuation of mankind in a way that benefits everyone equally. That's generally my goals. So now that I have my goals in mind, I have an understanding of the world and how it works, and also an understanding about how my actions affect those around me, and how my actions affect the world around me, and the understanding of the world that I want to see, I can now, using that system and the knowledge I have of the way the world works, determine whether actions are either good or bad, moral or immoral. Do my actions or the actions of others get us closer to my goal of human flourishing, or does it get us further away from my goal of human flourishing? Actions that get us closer to that goal are good or virtuous, and actions that get us away from that goal are bad or evil. And good, virtuous, bad, evil are really the same concepts, just to more extreme. Like I can call something virtuous, like, if I see tomorrow cancer was cured, I say, wow, that's a virtuous thing. That is perfect. I love it because it gets us closer to flourishing. It's a good thing and it is virtuous under my system. But if I see tomorrow, Holocaust 2.0 happens, I can say that is not just bad, that is evil, because it is getting us extremely further away from the goal that I had. So in a nutshell, that's my two different systems that I used to have. I had the divine dictate system as a JW, and now I have a more secular morality system based on my understanding of the world and all that.
My relatives are JWs, and I disagree with them as far as the aspect of the immortality of the soul. That's where I disagree with them on. And I think that in order to believe in God, you have to believe in the immortality of the soul.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? You broke up there for me for a moment. Say it one more time.
I said some of my relatives are JW, but I disagree with them on, they feel that when you die that's you're done and over with. But I believe in the immortality of the soul, and I think in order to believe in God, you have to believe in the immortality of the soul.
Okay, so let's actually drill down and analyze that, because this is a show more about your beliefs as a theist and us talking about your beliefs. So you have a good idea of where I'm coming from. So you believe in the immortality of the soul, you believe a God exists, and you believe that the existence of a God makes necessary, I'm sorry, I take that back. The existence of a God means that your soul exists and is immortal. Do you have evidence or argumentation to support those claims?
Well, just the anecdotal evidence that I mentioned before.
Anecdotal evidence? You mean about like Socrates and the other philosophers and such, and out of body experience?
Yeah, operating tables. Yeah.
Okay. So let's stick with the operating table experiences there then. So you think that's you said that's anecdotal evidence, and you think that is evidence for an immortal soul. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's say for a moment that it's not evidence of the immortal soul. What else would it be evidence of? Or rather, instead of the immortal soul being the explanation for that experience, what might be some other explanations for that experience?
I can't think of any.
I brought one up earlier. Have you ever hallucinated, John?
No.
You've never hallucinated? Do you think other people hallucinate?
No.
You don't think other people hallucinate? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's a delay, so I'm sorry. I'm not. Yeah. Okay. So you think other people hallucinate, right? What conditions do you think invoke hallucinations in other people?
Probably schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia is one of them. I think brain trauma could be another. Lack of oxygen, influence of drugs. You can have a bad pizza, like lots of different things can invoke hallucinations. So in an extreme condition, in extreme circumstances on the operating room table, when you are in a traumatizing, stressful experience, which way would you lean? Would you lean towards a natural explanation of, okay, this is just the brain doing brain things under duress? Or do you lean towards the supernatural and that a soul exists? And if you lean towards the soul, what's the evidence that is not the natural explanation?
Well, if it had just happened to one person, I would think that it would just be anecdotal. But if it happened to thousands of people, I would think that that would be something different.
Is it unreasonable to expect thousands of people to behave in the same manner? Humans are generally the same, right? We're all kind of generally built the same. We all have generally the same brains. We have generally the same configuration of organs and nerves and all that. So why would it be unreasonable to expect many people to experience these things without the explanation of a soul? For instance, let's think of it this way. You can think of the millions of cars are in the world. Lots and lots of cars have very similar issues when things go wrong. Gaskets break, oil leaks, the transmission starts making noises, tires go flat. We see commonalities with the way certain machines malfunction. We are biological, chemical, electrical machines in the same way that a car is a physical metal machine. So why is it unreasonable to expect us to malfunction in the same way?
Because I guess the people that had experienced that, they were clinically dead.
They were clinically dead. Well, we can go into the definitions of what dead is and dead isn't, and what clinically dead is and what clinically dead isn't. But here's the thing, though. Clinically dead and brain dead are two different things, right?
I don't think you can hallucinate if you're clinically dead, is my point.
What is clinically dead? I'm not a doctor, so I'm genuinely asking, what is your definition of clinically dead?
When you're flatlining.
Okay, so your heart's not beating. Does that necessarily mean your brain's not still working?
Well, how would your brain be getting any blood?
Exactly. But here's the thing, okay? You can actually cut off oxygen to the brain, and the brain holds on and keeps operating to various degrees of efficacy over the next few minutes. It takes several minutes for your brain to actually die. That's why we can have people who clinically die on the operating table and can be quote unquote revived. They get their heart beating again after a certain amount of minutes without brain damage, right? So we aren't actually bringing the brain back to life. We're restoring the support functions to keep that brain going before too much damage becomes permanent. So just because your heart stops beating doesn't mean your brain instantly stops functioning. Your brain is still functioning. And I think, I'm not a doctor, but that's the state, that oxygen-deprived, blood-deprived state. That's when the brain starts doing really weird things. And one of the common things we see is out-of-body experiences. Or we hear, rather. We don't see it, but we hear about it.
Okay, so you feel that it's completely natural then?
Yes. I lean towards that direction because, well, first of all, I look at it as a question of likelihood, okay? What's more likely? Just a natural explanation or a natural and a supernatural explanation? And in that case, we haven't really demonstrated the supernatural actually exists yet. So in questions like that, in statements like, or in these hypotheticals, these anecdotes, I'm going to lean towards relying on the things we know that exist rather than things we don't know exists. So yes, I will lean towards the natural all the time. Once the supernatural can be demonstrated to exist, then I might lean towards those explanations, but not until that happens.
What about the people that are clinically dead and they experience either heaven or hell?
Again, the brain malfunctioning. The brain's not dead when a person's clinically dead. The brain is shutting down. All right. And here's the thing too, like, okay, with the heaven and hell thing, that kind of gets more into like cultural conditioning. Cultural conditioning, and if you live in the United States, you live in Australia, you live in Europe, you're going to have predominantly Christian conditioning in culture and in your society. It's going to put those ideas in your head. So when you're just like when you go to sleep and you have dreams and you're dreaming about things you've experienced, things you've known, when your brain is dying, your brain's going to be generating imagery based off of what you put into your brain. How is that unreasonable?
Well, it's not, but I'm not sure that that's the explanation of it, though.
Is it a sufficient explanation, though, John?
Well, I guess you might think so. I guess I don't.
I'm asking you. So what is insufficient about that explanation? Okay, so what is insufficient about the naturalistic explanation that the supernatural explanation somehow satisfies? Because I don't see it.
Well, I guess when a person dies and they not only can see their body from the ceiling, but then they either go into heaven or hell, and then they they experience the heat and the fire of hell or the bliss of heaven.
Okay. So last night I had a dream. Last night I had a dream that I was in an outdoor market and I was shopping around. Did I actually go to an outdoor market and shopping around, or was my brain just generating imagery over past experiences?
It was generating imagery.
Okay. So when a person's on the table and their brain's in a traumatized state, where do you think the heaven and hell imagery is coming from? Is it coming from an actual heaven or hell, or is it coming from previous inputs into their brain from either their culture or their religion or stories they've read? What do you think? What's more likely in that case? Hell and heaven actually exist, or your brain is just generating imagery over what was fed previously?
Well, I guess I feel that there is a heaven and hell, but I guess I can see where you would disagree with that.
Okay, well, I'm asking you what you think, though, because I think the naturalistic explanation is perfectly sufficient. That might be strongly. It's sufficient for explaining the phenomenon we see. I don't see a need to put in the supernatural. Now, if you can demonstrate to me that the supernatural exists outside of anecdotes and outside of appeals to, past philosophers, if you can give me something meaty that I can like bite my teeth into and actually like really analyze, that'd be great. But as so far in this conversation, that hasn't happened. And we've been going now for about a half an hour, so I think people might getting bored at this point. Do you have anything? I guess my last question would be: do you have anything like concrete you can hand me that goes, here's an example of the supernatural. Here's how you can invoke the supernatural. Here's how we can analyze or test the supernatural. Do you have anything in that ballpark?
Well, we'll just have to wait till we're on the operating table.
Well, we would be back to square one then, because we just talked about all the natural explanations about that and things that I think is sufficient to explain those phenomenon. So I could be on the operating room table. I could be on the operating room table tomorrow. I could be in a car accident, bleeding out. My heart could stop, and I could have an out-of-body experience. And then the doctor saved me, and I come back, and later on I say, wow, I had an out-of-body experience. My brain was doing some funny stuff in that traumatized state. I would not be any closer to the supernatural at that point, because I have explanations that can sufficiently explain those phenomenon.
Okay, well, we'll just have to wait and see.
I guess so. All right, John.
It's good talking.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Bye. That was a nice conversation. It was kind of, yeah. Anyway, thank you, John. I really appreciate it. You still there, Matt?
Oh, I'm still there. I was muted. I thought you were going to... Shit. I just lost a chess game.
Yeah, I figured you might have been in the middle of a chess game. It was a nice conversation, but I think John could really benefit from exercising Occam's razor on some things. The explanation that sufficiently... The simpler explanation that sufficiently explains something is higher probability that it's true and is more preferred than the explanation that adds additional unnecessary things. Supernatural is an unnecessary addition to any explanation, because first of all, we can't demonstrate the supernatural actually exists. We don't even know if it actually exists. But also in these cases of like out-of-body experiences, heaven and hell experiences, things like that, we don't need that to explain why that's occurring. So I'll stick with the more likely higher probability explanations over ones that have additional fluff added to it. Because if we can add supernatural to an explanation, why not add leprechauns, or why not add unicorns? Like we could do whatever, aliens even. We don't need those to be in there. We can sufficiently explain things based on our understanding of how the brain works.
Yeah. So when it comes to near-death experiences, they tend to coincide with clinical death, and specifically reversible clinical death. So this notion that, oh, you were dead. And you're right to say that your brain doesn't just die the second you flatline. So, I mean, John has a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of death being a process. And you're not dead until you're dead for quite a while. But it's like, I would have expected maybe somebody like John to know that when you cut a chicken's head off, The body will continue to run around and everything else. Now that you don't necessarily know what's going on with the brain, but we know enough about the brain to know that it doesn't just stop when blood stops pumping. And that's one of the reasons why I, as someone who's had a triple bypass, have had somebody cut into my chest, crack my ribs open, stop my heart, pump blood via other means, repair damage, and then put it all back together. Your brain constantly fills in gaps in information. If there's anything that our brains are exceptional at, it is that, because you're literally doing it all day, every day. Just with vision alone, we have this constant visual field that, I would think runs from about over here to about over here and covers all this in an arc and everything. And my thought is I'm seeing all of it at once. No, I'm not. I have a limited field of vision and I have a more limited focus. And so your eyes dart around and dance around, and your brain fills in the gaps so that you have a continuity of experience. But if you were to watch a video of only what you could see in your visual field in that narrow focus at any given moment, you would recognize that your brain is making shit up all the time. Now, it's really good at it. And instead of just plucking stuff out of your butt, your brain is saying, this information probably hasn't changed much since the last time. Or if I saw motion this way, I can infer that this is going to continue based on this. And this is why when something doesn't go as predicted and there's a surprise, that's where your focus goes, because your brain is trying to say, hey, my information stream is regular. It's all regular. I'm getting this information, it's regular. I have an internal map of the world. Whoa, what the hell was that? Because that no longer matches my internal map of the world. When you have a brain that is deprived of oxygen and is in a state in a hopefully reversible clinical death situation, even if your brain goes to the point where it's not functioning, you can still be resuscitated in many cases. And then when your brain comes around, what's it going to do? It's going to say, hang on, there's a gap in my information stream, in my data stream. I need some sort of explanation for that. And then your brain says, okay, what can we infer? I'm in a hospital room. There's this, and this. I've heard stories of this sort of thing happening, of leaving the body and looking around. And therefore, it's perfectly reasonable and expected for your brain to make up that experience and to place it temporarily in the brain's narrative as if it occurred while your brain was out, when in reality, that story could be fabricated after your brain comes back around, and your brain just lies and places it there just like it lies on other things. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to do what we have done, which is test for near-death experiences. And so in an operating room, you can put a sign on top of something that can only be read from above, a hidden number. If your soul existed, which, by the way, I think the soul is the single most obviously dead concept, which we may get to in a minute, but if your soul existed and could float up to the top of the operating room, it could easily look at the drawing that's up there or the number that's up there. And then when you come to and your brain says, I was actually floating, and the proof is I saw this. But that's never, ever been a confirmed experience. Instead, it is, while I was out, this nurse said this thing. The problem is that even when you are recording the entirety of what goes on in the operating room, you could still be in a position where, despite being flatlined, you could still be hearing, your brain could be processing that information and could recognize it and put it together in a story afterwards, because that's what your brain does. Your brain is there to build a model of the world and a story of what's going on in the world. And when it doesn't have the information, it tends to make stuff up. And it's so good at it that it's going to be right more often than not, because we do it all day, every day.
I think Yeah, two things with that. One is, this is a really crude analogy, but your brain is kind of like a flywheel. Like if you imagine what a flywheel does, it stores that energy, and that flywheel keeps on going. Even after the power's been cut, even after your heart stops, your brain, like a flywheel, will keep on going. It's got some blood, it's got some oxygen, it's got some energy still. It's going to keep on going. It's going to wind down. But while it's doing that, it's still functioning. And it's in that state that weird things can happen. And as Matt said, you can still gain sensory input. You could still potentially see things. You could still potentially hear things. You could still potentially feel things on your skin. And your brain is going to do its best to keep on operating as if everything's okay. And as Matt mentioned earlier, your brain is great at filling in gaps. We literally have blind spots in our vision, like directly ahead. There's eye tests you can take where it says, hey, look at this in a certain way, and you won't be able to see that dot on that page anymore. But your brain does a really good job of filling in those gaps. And there's another thing too, like with memories. I'll wrap this up really quick. There's another really good thing about memories that I heard once was when you're recalling a memory, you're actually not recalling the actual event. You're actually recalling the last time you recalled the event. It's like you're recalling a memory of a memory. And over time, memories deteriorate, things get dropped. Your brain, if your brains aren't reinforcing those synapses and those neurons, your brain's going to start dropping things. And then at that point, your brain compensates by filling in the gaps with fuzzy data, fuzzy information, things that might actually not happen. That's why memory and anecdotal experience is so unreliable, because we know these things happen. These are all sufficient to explain the phenomenon we see. Go ahead.
Sometimes it can be good that you're recalling the last time you recalled it. Because, for example, if I have a memory of an event and my friend has a memory of an event, or we'll just go Arden, because this has come up about 50,000 times probably in the last 3 years. I have a memory of an event and I'm going to remember it. And then I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember it. At some point, Arden and I are going to compare notes, and her memory of the event is going to be different than mine. And when she says what her memory of the event is, my brain is either going to say, no, that's absolutely not what happened. And that could be because I'm right, or it could be because she's right, but in the process of remembering multiple times over, I've kind of rewritten the narrative. Or it could be that we're both wrong, I suppose. But if in fact I become convinced that Arden's memory and recollection of the event is more accurate, like she gives a detail that makes my brain go, oh yes, that thing that I shelved away or whatever else. Now the next time I recall that memory, I will recall the quote corrected memory that is based on what Arden influenced me. If in fact, between the two of us, we have the more accurate model once we compare notes on the story, then my new memory will in fact be more accurate than my old memory, even though it isn't a memory of the event. It's a memory of Arden and I talking about the event and comparing our memories. And one of the reasons that we rely on this, it's one of the reasons that we have this in the scientific method of independent verification. It's because we recognize that all of us can be fooled at any time, and all of our subjective experiences are prone to actual, not intentional deception by a separate agent, but your brain doing the best it can to keep you functioning, not necessarily to keep you tuned to the truth. Because sometimes what is beneficial to you is not necessarily true. And to seek truth, to be in this position, like the t-shirt that I wore around and advocated, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. That's not a trivial thing. And it's not the default position. The default position from most humans' brain perspective is, I'm willing to accept whatever appears to be useful to me, whatever appears to be beneficial to me. I'm just convinced that the true beneficial aspect is tied to truth. And so even going back to the conversation that we had about, morality, one thing that frequently comes up is this definition of better. Is it better for you? Is it better for me? Is it better for us? And sometimes because those things come in conflict, there may not be an answer for, what's the truly better thing. But there are knee-jerk reactions. Like if I said I took a knife and cut Eric's throat open, the knee-jerk reaction is that I did something that was not beneficial. But if I'm performing a tracheotomy, which is another way of saying the exact same thing, then I may well be doing something that's beneficial. And so you need extra information. We got another caller here about the soul. Sven in Washington, did you want to talk to me or Eric or both?
I don't mind hearing input from you both. I'm
awesome.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
I will pay attention.
Oh yeah, good evening. Mainly I wanted to touch on how, so from everything I've learned about Platonism, especially Platonic realism, it's that the soul and concepts that are forms are immaterial. And so I just wonder if it's disingenuous or just a common way that you guys phrase things, but I just always find it so strange when people bring up concepts like the soul. How do we measure it? How do we test it? When measuring is done by tools, which are done definitionally to measure the physical world. But when philosophers are talking about souls, they are talking about the immaterial. So there would be no such thing as a tool to measure the material, because that is not what definitionally tools do, or definitionally what immaterial is. Would you accept that?
What method has someone used to detect a soul?
Yeah, no, I am fine conceding that it is undetectable. It is an axiom. That's why a lot of people become go ahead.
I will not accept it. I accept that, you can make it an axiom if you want. I do not axiomatically accept the existence of soul, and I don't see any. What would be the justification for axiomatically accepting the justification that a soul is real?
I think that all other axioms of logic have to be founded on something. Unfortunately, this is what a lot of Christian apologetics get to, because it's what you have to do. You get backed into a corner. I don't mind admitting that. I'm in a corner where it's...
The existence of a soul isn't an axiom of logic. It's an assumption of a particular theist model.
It is something that is accepted in almost all Platonic models, because it is identifying the self, and so the law of Isaac separate from a. Oh, sorry.
Why would I care if it's in Platonic models? I'm not a Platonist. I want to know if in fact a soul exists, and if all you can say is we just assume that it exists, well, okay, how is that more justified than assuming it doesn't exist?
I don't think that Platonists or nominalists are more justified or less justified in their views.
So Sven, even if we were to say, okay, and under some models, the soul itself is axiomatic or even as a presupposition, presuppositions, in my opinion, are best kept to the realm of things we can observe, but can't prove, because we can't prove our presuppositions, they're just assumed, but they're based on observations. But I think a key part of that is the falsification criterion for each of our presuppositions. So here in your comment here, the soul cannot be empirically verified. Can we at least falsify it in some way?
If I'm mistaken, I'd love to be corrected, but I don't think axioms can be falsified.
I can falsify certain axioms.
I have no problem.
I can conceive of ways to falsify certain axioms, rather. Right? So like the axioms of logic, the law of identity, all I got to do is produce something to you that is both itself and not itself. I don't think we can do that, but that's a falsification criterion. Present an example that breaks the axiom. So in your case with the soul,
sure,
if you can't empirically, if you can't,
go
ahead.
Yeah, I think if you were able to present
we can, even though we can't imagine what's
the soul that's an axiom. I had tried to clarify that a soul is an axiom of forms. It's accepting that abstract concepts exist. So the way to falsify that would be to show that this is a concept that is abstract and exists in the physical world as a bad reflection, and this is an example of an abstract concept that has no reflection in the physical world. I believe that would falsify it, but I haven't worked that out. That was off the top of my head. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow that entirely, but I mean, basically, if it's being presented as an axiom and it can't be empirically verified, and as far as I've heard, I haven't heard any falsification criterion on that yet, but you might have one. I'm just not understanding it yet. But if it is the case that you can't empirically verify it or falsify it, then I don't see how that can be at all a useful idea. Because I can name all kinds of stuff that can't be verified or falsified and doesn't make it exist or true. It puts it outside the realm of any type of verification or anything like that. I don't see how that can possibly be useful to us.
I think the fact that this show exists proves that it's useful to a great many of people.
I agree. There's utility to it.
Is utility separate from usefulness?
I think there's utility when it comes to like comfort, like believing in a soul. Like, okay, I'm gonna persist after I die. Death's not so scary. Like, I can see utility there. Doesn't make it true. There's use there, but doesn't make it true. And I'm concerned with things that are.
Statement, were you not speaking about the usefulness of it, not its truth? That's why I spoke up, because you said I don't find any way that could be useful. That was what I spoke out against, not its truth value.
Yeah, no, I'm separating the two. I think usefulness and utility is independent of its actual truth value. But the idea itself.
Oh, and I would 100% agree. That's why I didn't disagree with.
Yeah, I see. I think I see what I said that was causing that that question there. When it comes to usefulness, I'm talking about establishing, like ontology, like what actually exists and what actually doesn't, and the epistemology that we use to get to figuring out whether those truth claims are actually true or not. I don't see how an axiom that can't be verified or falsified can be useful at all in the epistemological, definitely, but also like in the ontological, like, okay, I can think of all kinds of things that fit that criteria. It doesn't actually make them exist. I can imagine worlds where they do, but that doesn't actually mean that the world we live in is that world that I'm imagining.
Yeah, I don't mind ending the call here and doing more research on a way to falsify it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would love to hear
verified debate.
Yeah, I would love to hear falsification criterion for the proposition of a soul. So yeah, if you can come back with something, we can definitely sink our teeth into it and talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to see how like asking for measurements for forms made any sense. I still don't see how it does, but I think we're on a closer page of understanding.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, like you can think of like asking for measurements might not necessarily be like, there's many things that we can't directly measure. Like for instance, whatever dark matter is, there's scientists, cosmologists, we have but they have a concept of dark matter because they don't observe the dark matter directly. They're observing the effects in the world around it. So if the soul does exist and has some effect on our reality, there should be a way we can measure it and run tests against it. And so we don't necessarily have to measure
our reality.
It doesn't. Okay, well, if it doesn't affect our reality, then I don't see why we even have to talk about it because it doesn't affect our reality. Like it seems almost like a moot point at that point. Like you can talk about hypotheticals for fun, but I don't see how we can find anything, like I said, useful out of this if the thing we're talking about literally does not affect our reality.
Well, it's because it's going to be an axiom, so it is of great importance to people who hold this view.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, we can leave it at there. And
people who view this, like they seem the soul is more real than the physical world. So, like when I say in our reality, it doesn't affect it. Yes.
What does more real mean?
Great, it doesn't sing in the physical world, but. What was that?
What does more real mean, and how do you show that something is more real than? I'm not aware of anything being more real than anything else. I'm just aware of things being real and things being apparently not real. So, what does it mean for something to be more real than reality?
It would. I hope this answers your question. It would be like saying things can exist outside of time and space. Nominalists use the word existence to mean something very specific within time and space. But when Platonists use the word exist, they don't just mean that.
I also don't know how something can exist absent time. for sure, but definitely, but I think also
Mhm.
absent space. But I still don't know what it means to say it's more real. Um, that's like saying someone's
Yeah,
more
I think the
pregnant.
concept. Sorry. I think the concept of like we have math, thankfully, that shows us almost the greatest precision that we can find in our universe, and so we almost understand what a perfect circle is. But in our reality, it's almost proven or understood that there can be no such thing as a perfect circle. All we see are poor reflections and talk about the universal of roundness. But to me,
Yeah.
the essence of reality of roundness is what that circle, and so that circle has to have an essence. That essence must exist, and so that would be a more pure existence than the poor reflections that we speak of when we talk of universals. That's what it means for more real. Now that makes sense.
Except that the description you gave is literally something that even you acknowledge cannot exist. A perfect circle is merely an abstraction that by definition cannot exist.
In our realm,
So,
correct.
no, okay. What other realm is there? And how do you know there's another realm?
I believe there's a realm of forms where the good exists that you made me realize I would have to call God. That's
how can you demonstrate this realm exists? What does it mean for it to exist?
I think that it comes down to intuition, like all axioms have to. Unfortunately, I didn't want to come.
Axioms aren't a matter of intuition, and why do we need to rely on intuition? Axioms are something that you accept as a matter of course. Axioms are something that you accept as true, in part because you have no way to demonstrate that they are true. So they need to be, as limited as possible. But they're not based on intuition. What is the demonstration that intuition is a reliable mechanism for determining truth?
Yeah, I would say that when people, whether they've studied philosophy or whether they have an understanding of, a child, when it sees two apples, it sees two apples. It's not
What is the demonstration? What is the demonstration that intuition is a reliable path to truth?
Well, I was trying to explain it in that I think that our axioms are intuited and that we have to use rationality as our very basis of knowledge and understanding.
What is the demonstration that intuition is a reliable path to truth? Why won't you answer the question?
The demonstration is that our axioms are built upon intuition. If that's not a satisfying answer, then
so first of all, you can't say that axioms are. You can't just assert that axioms are built on intuitions. I reject that. But even if I accepted that axioms are based on intuitions, that's not a mechanism to show that intuitions are a reliable path to truth. I'm asking you, what is the demonstration that intuitions are a reliable path to truth? Axioms are irrelevant to this, as they're not true. They are assumed, they are assumptions, they are presuppositions, and whether you intuit them or not, that's not a truth. What is the demonstration that intuition is a mechanism that reliably leads to truth?
I don't have one.
Then
sorry.
Why?
That's why I handled it with a different question.
Why would you rely on intuition if you don't have any way of showing that it's likely to lead you to truth?
Because I do believe it leads me to truth. It's just an assertion to you, and that's fine. It is an assertion, and that's what leads me to believe there.
Let's tackle this from the other side here, Sven. Can intuitions lead you to false conclusions?
Yes, I think
all. So an intuition can lead you to a true conclusion. An intuition can lead you to a false conclusion. So an intuition isn't a reliable means to get to the truth. What other thing can you bring to the table to get you? So let's say we have a proposition. We'll just call it Proposition X. Okay. One person says, my intuition says Proposition X is true. Another one says, my intuition says Proposition X is false. Intuition in this case is not a reliable method to get to whether X is true or not. What additional thing can you bring to the table to get you to say that Proposition X is true? Intuition's not
I
enough
do
to cut
truly
it.
believe that only convincing arguments can drive someone away from their intuition. So that's all I would. Yeah.
Okay.
Those two people would need to
so once you
present
have an
convincing
argument,
arguments to each other, and whoever had the most one would appear as the most true.
So once you have an argument, you don't need the intuition anymore. And up to that point, the intuition's useless to determine whether something's actually true or not. So why are we clinging to intuition? Because I mean, if you had the argument, I didn't think you'd be relying on the argument. You don't have an argument, so you're relying on intuition. We just established intuition does not lead you reliably to truth. So you don't have anything to convince us that this thing is true that you're proposing. Like, can you see like where we are on this? How we're seeing this dilemma here?
I can. That's why I called him with the question I called him. I
Okay.
understand the dilemma. I appreciate it. I don't know how to cross it because I think it's
all right.
As something you can only accept upon an axiom.
Maybe
accept.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything. Please go ahead.
All right. Well, it was a good conversation, but as you said before, like think about how you would falsify the whole idea of a soul and whether that's true or not, and then after
I have
that,
homework. I have it written in my notebook.
Yeah, great. And then also ask yourself about intuition. Ask yourself, how reliable is this? Does this really get me anywhere where I can? Because sure, you can justify it to yourself with intuition, but you can't know it to be true. You just by our conversation just a few minutes ago, we know that intuition is not a reliable method to do these things. You can maybe fool yourself into believing something because you trust your intuition more than you trust the intuition of the other person that's as the opposing viewpoint. But that's a bias towards your own thoughts. Think about how you can, what other mechanisms, what other epistemology you can use to get to that truth value other than intuition and your personal biases.
Sounds good. Thank you for the conversation.
All right, Sven. It was a good conversation. I hope you have a good day.
You too.
Thanks, Sven. I'm always baffled at and I get it. You know, people are doing their best with whatever information they have and they're going to go with their gut. But what if my intuition says you're full of shit? And your intuition says that I'm full of shit. Maybe we're both full of shit and both of our intuitions are right. But if, like, I've got a 20-sided die here, an MTG spin down. But if somebody picked a number from 1 to 20 and I rolled it, well, pick a number from 1 to 20, Eric.
16.
16. Okay. I rolled exactly a 16. Does that mean that this is now a reliable path to predicting what number Eric picked? What if I did it 10 times in a row? Now I'd have, at least in a short sample run, I'd have 100% accuracy. What if it got it wrong the 11th time? Does that mean it's no longer reliable? What if it got wrong 5,000 times in a row after the initial 10 times? The thing is, we'd expect this to get it right at the rate of 20 or 5%. 1 in 20 it's going to get it, assuming you're picking a number that's actually on here and not the 20, which is just a symbol. I don't even know what set that's from. But this is the problem, is that intuition feels different than just rolling the dice. And it is, because you are constantly training your intuition. You're taking on board information. You're taking your experience and putting it in there, and you are consistently making predictions. And the more times you get them right or close enough to right to be okay, the more reliable you find your intuition. And so if you then intuit that, man, look at this big universe, somebody had to design this just as a matter of intuition, it's going to feel like you've come up with a completely reasonable path to truth. But there's a reason why we have rigorous syllogistic forms and the study of those to determine whether or not an argument is valid and sound. And then there's a reason why we rely on scientific methods that attempt to take the bias and our intuitions out of it. It's why we rely on data, independent confirmation of the data, independent replication of the results in addition to verifying those results. And so if there is a soul, we have not to date been able to identify it, detect it, replicate it. And as the last caller was saying, they think that it's not something you could ever, or that you can empirically demonstrate. I don't know if they said now, but at least or forever, but at least for now, they don't think it's something you can empirically demonstrate. And so then the question becomes, why believe in it? Now, in my case, I not only am not convinced that there is a soul, I'm convinced that there aren't souls. I'm convinced that the concept of a soul is false. Because if you take the model of what people say the soul is, it includes my thoughts, my experiences, my personalities, my memories. Those are all functions of my brain, and they are all malleable functions of my brain. If I suffer the correct brain trauma, my personality can be reset, which some of you might enjoy. My memories can be reset and wiped out. My thoughts and desires, all of those things can change based on the mere physical damage to my brain. So then now you're in this weird situation is there now a soul that is trying to steer my brain, but it can't because the link has been severed? If that's the case, then I would be proof that you can't tell the difference between an ensouled or a soul-driven human agent and one that is not being driven by a soul. Because if I'm still able to function and the soul is not guiding or doing anything, then clearly a soul is irrelevant to the normal function of a human being. Set aside the whole issue of if I do something sinful, does that get attributed to the soul that wasn't steering at the time? And if I can exist without a soul steering, what's the evidence and reason for a soul? As you dig through it, everything you find, every identifiable attribute of a soul is a functional part of a brain that is malleable. And the things about the soul that you can't demonstrate, that it can exist separate from a body, that it can exist at all, that it continues after we're gone, that it is in fact an eternal soul. One of the questions that came up earlier was I think it was John was saying that he thinks the near-death experience is a proof of an immortal soul. But even if we absolutely confirmed that a soul exists, how do we conclude that it's immortal? And so this is the example where John is adding features in based on his intuition. And so the question then becomes, why rely on intuition at all? We've got a couple other calls to get to today. If you're ready, we can keep going.
Sure, let's go.
We have another John from England, pronouns are he, him, who's a theist and wants to ask us about homosexuality and incest. Wow. Okay, John, you're on with Matt and Eric.
Hi. Do you believe in homosexuality or incest as an atheist?
I believe they both exist and occur, yes.
Yeah, they exist.
What do you yes, of course. You don't need to be a theist or an atheist to understand that they exist.
Okay.
But do you accept homosexuality and incest?
I have no moral objection to homosexuality, and I think it should be legally permissible. I only have moral and legal objections to incest when it occurs between individuals who are so closely related that there are risks of harm beyond those individuals, or when informed, non-coerced consent is inhibited by the nature of the relationship prior to becoming sexual. So that, if there's like a parent or whoever's the guardian is grooming someone for a sexual relationship. Outside of that, if two consenting adults who happen to be related want to have a sexual relationship, none of my business.
So you don't object to two consenting adults who, let's say, for example, use protection, who are twin brother and sister. You have no objection to that.
I don't know what the objection would be, except that those are closely related individuals where there may be either a risk of harm to them or where there may have been coercion. And so this is why I'm pointing out that my lone objections are based on those two things. I don't know of another one.
The question, John, really comes down to the potential for harm. to somebody else.
Okay,
So I'm in alignment with so no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm in alignment with pretty much everything Matt just said. So let's come up with a hypothetical about incest. Okay, let's say two people who are siblings in real life, but they don't realize they're siblings in real life. Let's say they get together, they get married, they have no idea they're siblings, and they're sterile. All right, let's paint this hypothetical. You have two people, they don't know they're siblings, they're sterile, they get married. All right, they have lots of sex. There's no possibility for children, they don't know they're siblings. And then one day they find out, whoa, we have the same mother and father, we were separated at birth. Does that relationship transition from moral to immoral?
You presented one hypothetical situation.
Because I'm trying to get to the John. I'm trying to get to the core of the matter. John, I'm trying to get to the core of the question here. So I'm painting a very narrow case, but it's very realistic. This can happen. It probably has happened. Can two people get married, not knowing that they're siblings? They can both be sterile. That relationship be considered moral by all consensus, by all people around them. And all of a sudden, when they find out that they're siblings, does that all of a sudden change the relationship from moral to immoral? Please answer the question there.
Well, for theists, they have a sense of objective morality.
I asked you a yes or no question there, John. John, I asked you a yes or no question about my hypothetical. Please answer it.
And also, not all theists agree. And whether or not they view morality as objective or not is completely irrelevant. He gave you asked us what our take was on homosexuality and incest. We gave it to you. He asked you a return question of, in this particular scenario, do you, under whatever model you're doing, do you think that is immoral to begin with, or does it become immoral once they discover their siblings, or does it never become immoral?
My belief is that it is immoral to begin with.
Okay. So two people who don't know they're related could get together and enter a romantic sexual relationship, and they have done something immoral even though they don't know it.
Can I present a hypothetical to you?
I'm asking for clarification on that. I'm asking for clarification on that. Are you saying that two people who have no idea they're related could get together and enter a romantic sexual relationship, and that relationship is immoral on the grounds of incest, despite the fact that they don't know they're related?
If they don't know they're related, well, it wouldn't be immoral.
Okay, that contradicts what you said a minute ago. So go ahead, Eric.
So John, just to reiterate, we have one case of incest that you just admitted is not immoral. So with that in mind, we have a case of incest that's not immoral. There must be some other criteria to determine whether that relationship is moral or immoral, right? Because now incest is removed out of it, because incest doesn't have a direct bearing on whether it's moral or immoral. There must be something else.
Objective morality. That's what I'm trying to point you towards.
We just established that the morality of the situation is subjective to certain criteria or certain circumstances around it. So it is not objectively.
If it's objective, then it's objectively not immoral if they don't know about it. Which is it?
There you go.
Can I explain my answer?
Sure.
I'm literally asking you a question that says you said in this scenario it would not be immoral. Are you saying it is objectively not immoral, or that your subjective assessment is that it is not immoral?
No, it's not my subjective assessment. My subjective assessment is predicated on an objective moral code.
Okay, that's not what I asked, but so let me get, just for clarity.
That's my answer. I just want to let me
can I get the fucking clarity? Stop trying to talk over me. It's never, ever, 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 ever going to work. Two people who do not know that they are related enter into a romantic sexual relationship, and you are saying that is objectively not immoral, correct?
No, I didn't say it's objectively not immoral. I've said that it's immoral. It's not
you just
immoral.
said it wasn't immoral.
It's not immoral. It's not immoral. Okay.
Okay. Is that objective?
And according to an objective moral code,
I'm asking you.
You're talking about my. Yes, you've asked me the question. My subjective assessment.
You have given me two
objective
completely
moral code.
different answers. Don't sit there and do this. You've asked me the question. You've given me two completely different answers. I'm going to ask this question again. Please try to focus. Two people who do not know that they are related enter into a romantic sexual relationship. I'm going to ask you two questions. Is that moral or immoral? That's the first question. You going to answer, John?
I said it's moral.
Okay. It is morally permissible for two people. Is that assessment that you just gave of the morality of that, is that based on objective moral standards?
That's based on objective moral standards. Yes.
So when I asked you, if two people who don't know each other enter into a romantic sexual relationship, according to you, that is objectively moral. Okay.
So, John, the point we were trying to get to is that morality and immorality is highly contextual. So you can have an technically incestuous relationship where two people don't know they're related. They aren't harming anybody else. They aren't harming each other. There was no grooming involved.
Please let me finish my question.
Oh, you're back.
No,
Go ahead.
because you didn't answer my question. You just sat there in fucking silence.
I've answered your question.
I'm asking you. Okay, I'm going to mute you. I want to make sure this is clear because you have given contradictory answers. Is it the case that you are saying it is objectively not immoral for two people who don't know they're in a relationship or don't know they're related to enter into a romantic sexual relationship? Yes or no?
I said that's morally permissible.
Okay. Why does it, to get back to Eric's question from 8 minutes ago, why do you think it's morally impermissible if they know they're related?
Because I ascribe to an objective moral code.
Prove it. And what does your objective moral code, what is the foundation of your objective moral code? What makes it objective? And how do you know this is wrong?
Okay. So for me to answer that question, I need to understand what your understanding of my hypothetical situation that I want to present to you.
Give it up.
Okay. So you have a man and a woman who are twin brother and sister who know each other.
Hello? You said a man and woman who are twins who know each other.
Who know each other. They are twin brother and sister who enter into a knowingly they are entering into a sexual relationship with contraception. They're not harming anybody else. Do you think that's morally permissible?
Yes. Hang on.
Why?
Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. What are you laughing at?
Well, I'm laughing at you if you believe in incest.
Okay. Well, you're stupid as fuck. So listen to me. What I'm saying is your scenario of a man and a woman who are twins, who know each other, who know that they're related, and enter into a sexual relationship, I would say that is only immoral if there has been coercion due to the nature of their relationship. As I said from the beginning, I have moral and legal objections to incest when it occurs between individuals who are so closely related that there are risks of harm beyond those individuals, or when informed, non-coerced consent is inhibited by the nature of the relationship. And so it could be the case that there could be the case that a man and a woman who are twins and know it and enter a sexual relationship. There could be cases where there's something immoral there, where coercion has happened. But if two consenting informed, let me finish my fucking thought. If two consenting adults who happen to be twin brother and sister knowingly enter into a romantic sexual relationship without coercion, I do not find it to be immoral at all.
Well, the thing is, it's your show, Matt. You are sounding ridiculous, okay? The entire argument can be stretched to a man and an animal, okay? They are knowingly entering into a non-coerced...
John, please keep telling me how ridiculous I am. Please keep telling me how ridiculous I am. When you went to bestiality, you never asked a fucking question about bestiality, you dishonest interlocutor. You asked about homosexuality and you asked about incest. No, you don't get to fucking respond until I'm done talking. Why is that so difficult for you to fucking grok? I gave you a detailed, thought out answer that's based on sound philosophical positions on morality. And you laughed, said I was ridiculous, and then said that you could slippery slope this bullshit into bestiality, a subject that we haven't discussed at all. Do you have anything honest and informative to say before I let you go?
I've proved to you how ridiculous your atheistic moral principles are, which is predicated on a fault.
Okay, I'm muting you because you haven't proved anything. You haven't proved anything to me. My positions are not based on atheism. You've only demonstrated that you don't understand how to have a conversation about this. You don't understand the topics, and you are not willing to be honest by suggesting that your personal ick-feeling derision that you equate with incest can be extended to bestiality, which we still haven't discussed. Are you capable of being honest, or should we just let you go?
I'm going to retract the bestiality issue.
Cool. Tell me what's wrong, then.
Are you okay with that?
Tell me what's wrong. Tell me. I fucking said cool. You've retracted the bestiality thing. You. Tell me what's wrong with two consenting adults who happen to be related entering into a sexual relationship. What is wrong with that?
No, you haven't qualified it. Two related,
Your mic shut off again. Yes. The brother and sister who know their brother and sister who start fucking. What's wrong with that?
Have you unmuted me?
No, I didn't have you muted for any of this. You have a problem with your microphone. I'm asking you, the brother and sister who are adults, where there was no coercion, who entered knowingly into a sexual relationship, you are claiming that it is morally wrong, and I'm asking why, because I don't see anything morally wrong with it. We're waiting.
This,
John,
because
we're waiting.
Your moral compass is so skewed.
No, John. I'm going to mute you, and then we're going to try this again. I'm asking you why it's wrong. Replying that my moral compass is skewed is not an explanation for why it's wrong. I'm asking you why it's wrong. Are you able to present a case for why it's wrong or not?
Let's present you with the argument of a functioning society. lots of
John,
brothers and sisters all across the world
John,
who are not harming each other.
First of
who
all,
are
John,
stopping-
go get a better microphone, but are you going to answer my question or not?
I'm going to answer why it's morally wrong. Yes.
Thank you. Please do.
Okay. You use the term slippery slope. We live in a society, and we need to have a functioning society. If we permit certain moral, reprehensible acts,
John, you keep cutting out.
Yeah, your
This is a
microphone's your worst
problem.
enemy here, John.
This is a problem with the microphone. So,
are you
So, first of
blaming
all,
it on
slip-
the microphone now?
yes,
John, we
I'm
aren't-
blaming
You're
it
the
on
one
your fucking microphone. I didn't mute you. You've cut out multiple times when nobody has muted you. It's not our fault that you have garbage equipment. Are you going to present the rest of your defense, or are you going to keep whining? How does
It's not about
how
me
does
presenting
how
why it's
does-
morally wrong.
it is about you?
I
It is
have-
one.
I have told-
It is 100. Shut up. I am muting you now. It is 100% about you defending your assertion that it's immoral. So I'm going to ask you again. How does society stop functioning if we permit two consenting adults who happen to be twins to have a sexual relationship? How does that cause a functioning society to break down, John?
You have said that your question was, why is it morally wrong according to me? I am giving you my answer, which is my assessment.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again, John. I don't know what the fuck's wrong over in the UK. I don't know if you've all got mad cow and are incapable of actually answering the question that someone is fucking directly asking you. But I'm trying to save time. I asked you why it was immoral, and you started your case. And you said that I mentioned slippery slope and that we need a functioning society. And if we permit certain morally reprehensible acts, my presumption was you were going to say that would cause society to no longer function. Did I reasonably interpret your statement about allowing morally reprehensible acts correctly? That you think that will lead to an inferiorly functioning society?
Yes, you've summarized my argument.
Then yes, I know, which is why I said, how does allowing two people who are twins lead to a non-functioning society? Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. John?
I can hear you.
Yeah, well, we can't hear you, and that's your problem, not mine. How does allowing two twins to have sex lead to a non-functioning society?
According to my objective moral code, okay, I have an objective moral code, okay, which is based on God and God's rules, okay? Your rules are arbitrary. And
John, I've asked you this question and now you're avoiding it. First of all, you would need to demonstrate that your morality is in fact based on God and how you know what God's views are, which you haven't done. And by the way, a morality based on God is still subjective. It's just that God is the subject. But what I asked you was, how does allowing twins to have sex, absent the objections that I had, lead to a non-functioning society?
Let me explain. If you stop cutting me off, then I will be able to explain.
No, I'm going to mute you again. One of these days, you dumb motherfuckers are going to get this through your stupid fucking heads. I'm asking you a question. I'm going to take you off mute. You answer that question, and then you get to continue. If you whine like a little baby, you don't get to continue. You get another lecture. You get a timeout from daddy as I spank you over to the bottom and send you off, except I'm not going to spank you because I don't agree with hitting kids. So please explain.
You should spank your mother before you get into bed with her, because you condone incest in your moral.
John, have you listened to anything we told you here?
No.
I have.
Like we
your
laid out
colleague-
earlier. We laid
your
out
colleague is
earlier,
ridiculous.
John. We laid out earlier that at the most base case of just two consenting adults who happen to be related, at the most base case, there's no grounds to call that immorality. Now you can add in contextual scenarios where, okay, maybe grooming occurred, maybe coercion occurred, maybe they're trying to do it to produce offspring that are genetically messed up. If you add in scenarios like that, then yeah, now we can cross into the immorality territory. But absent
no
of those
interest.
extenuating, absent of those
Sorry.
circumstances, at the base case, we're not in immoral territory. We're just at two consenting adults. Let me ask you this, John.
Hang on.
Okay, go
I
ahead,
have
Joe.
no
Go
interest.
ahead, Matt.
I have no interest in having sex with my mother, and those sorts of relationships are so close that it would be coercive. But I will happily spank your mom while I'm pounding her if she asks me to.
You're the one who's into incest, buddy, not me.
John,
It's not incest if I'm fucking your mom, is it?
Hey, you're the
John-
one who just condoned incest live on YouTube.
Yes. And you're the one who's done nothing to suggest why it should be immoral other than you think you have a God that's opposed to it.
so John, let's try this. John, let's imagine a society, right, like ours, where third cousins marry and have sex. Is that moral or immoral? Third cousins.
Now, I don't want to move away from the.
No, we don't care what you want.
hypothetical
Answer that
scenario
question.
I presented to
Answer
you.
the question. Answer the question.
John,
I have.
You have
No,
not.
I have-
You just said you don't want to.
John, third cousins.
No.
Is it moral or immoral
we
for
are-
third
we are
cousins to have
buying away
sex?
from the actual.
No, John,
hypothetical
we're talking
situation.
about incest.
Cousins are incest, John.
We've got Matt's view. Eric, what's your view? Can we just?
I'm literally
confirm what your
asking you a
view is? We've
question
got
to
Matt's
talk about
view.
my view, John. John, answer my question, yes or no.
what is
Third
your view?
cousins. I gave it to you at the
Third
beginning of
cousins.
the call. My view is in alignment with Matt's. So answer my question.
Yeah, I don't believe that's immoral. I don't believe that's immoral.
Okay, you don't believe third cousins are immoral. Thank you for the answer. What about second cousins?
I don't believe that's immoral.
Okay, what about first cousins?
I don't believe that's immoral.
Okay,
Have I answered
what
your
about
question
siblings?
succinctly?
No. Stop. We're almost there. We're almost at the finish line. Stick with me. First, second, or third cousins, second cousins, first cousins, not immoral by your own words. What about siblings?
Yes, it's immoral. It's called incest.
What changed? Other than your arbitrary label, what changed?
Because I am subjective code. What part of that don't you both understand?
Say that again. Your mic cut out again. You need better reception or a better phone. Say that again.
My subjective assessment is based on an objective moral code.
So your God says so.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. I don't give two shits about what your God says. I don't think your God's real. So now where do we go?
But now I accept that you do not believe in God, but do you understand if you
These technical problems are getting in the way. I think we should just drop John. John, think about outside of your God's opinion. I'd rather take that back. Outside of your opinion about your God's opinion, what changes from first cousins to siblings? With all other things being equal, with no harm being done to anybody, what changes from first cousins to siblings? I find it icky. Yeah, I find it icky too. I don't like the idea of incest, but I can't declare it immoral because I can't find anything immoral about it. I can find it icky. I can find it gross. I would never want to engage with it myself.
What do you mean by icky? What do you mean by icky? What does that mean?
Icky. It feels weird. It does. I don't like the idea, but I can't take my emotions about it and say now it's immoral because I have emotions about it. That might be the disconnect here. Your morality is guided by your emotions and what you think your God is telling you. Whereas our morality is guided by evidence and consequences and whether or not people are consenting and who's getting harmed and what's the impact on society after that. We take in far more criteria and far more data than you do, because you just read a holy book and says, I think my God thinks this. That's not good enough for me.
No, you talk with your previous callers, you spoke about gene and an allele. Can you give me a definition of what an allele is?
I'm not a biologist.
What is the definition of an allele?
Allele is a specific gene location where a pair of genes occur.
Yes. Okay. And what is the definition of a gene?
Why are we talking about this? Do you really just want us to spend time giving you a science lesson? How is it? How is the definition? How is the definition of a gene relevant to this conversation? How is the definition of a gene relevant to this conversation? John? Okay. Goodbye, John.
I think he was trying to get towards similarity in genetics. Somehow switches it from immoral or moral to immoral, or the chance to produce offspring that might have genetic defects. Maybe I don't know.
That might be the case, but a gene is an almost nondescript unit of heredity,
Sure.
because the specific length of a DNA sequence in a human gene is different from elsewhere. But none of it matters, because in my initial response to this, I specifically said, and I wrote it down, I have moral and legal objections to incest, and yet he wants to portray as if I'm in favor of incest, when it occurs between individuals who are so closely related that there are risks of harm beyond those individuals, which includes the risk of harm to potential offspring via genetic problems, or when informed, non-coerced consent is inhibited by essentially the grooming scenario, where a parent or even an aunt, if I was raised with my second cousin and they groomed me to have sex with them. By the way, John seems to think that incest is only between people who are either siblings or parents and child. That's not the definition of incest. Incest has a fuzzy line as well, as to it's just about having sex between people who are considered to be too closely related. And so in John's case, it's just parent, child, siblings. I don't know if grandchildren fit in there, because John has this view where the interesting thing is, if you go to the Bible, which may be John's source on what God thinks, but I don't know how you can show that that's what God thinks or why God is necessarily right. But if you go to the Bible, it specifically lists who you can and can't have sex with. There's one that's missing.
That's the reason at the very, very beginning of the call, when which after that, Matt, you built up that case much better than I did. My scenario at the beginning of the call are two people who didn't know each other. They're sterile, so there's no possibility of offspring. And the fact that they don't know each other eliminates the idea of coercion and grooming. You get two people, just the most base case, absent of anything that could be considered negative for another person. Take that scenario and then ask yourself, is this moral or immoral? And I can't find a way to call that immoral other than it's called incest, and incest is immoral, which is what John's basically getting to, which is God's dictate. Like, think of the most base case absent of any factors that might harm other people, and then ask yourself, is this really immoral? And if your answer is no, then other things determine whether it's moral or immoral. Hence the grooming, hence the having offspring that may have genetic difficulties, hence any other things that might come after that. But at its base case, you can't determine it's immoral, because no one, at least under my moral system, no one's being harmed.
Yeah, John wants the soundbite of, Matt's in favor of incest, or Matt can't find anything wrong with incest. When the problem is that I gave my initial explanation with a thoughtful, detailed case for when I think there are specific problems with incest. And so the reality is, Matt's willing to allow people to have permissible sexual relationships between consenting adults, and right up to the point where actual harm or coercion can be demonstrated. On the other hand, if you go to the Bible, in Leviticus chapter 18, verses 7 through 17, the specific sexual relationships that are prohibited is someone and their mother, a son and father, a son and stepmother, a son and the paternal or maternal sister, a son and the paternal sister through the father's wife. So we're already approaching siblings by marriage. Anyway, it goes through a specific list. That's so weird that when we're having this conversation about does second cousin count, does third cousin counts, evidently John is okay with fucking his cousins, but not a sibling. And I'm like, if we're going to get to genetics, what is the genetic risk of siblings versus cousins? And at the end of the day, if what John is saying is that he's opposed to these specific relationships and not these others, because that's what he thinks God wants, and I'm saying I'm opposed to any relationship where there has been coercion, whose position's better?
I would also ask John, where does God at all talk about genetics? Like, how can John link genetics with what and why God dictates something? Like, yeah, it really comes down to John is working off of divine dictate, which divine dictate really comes down to what is my intuition about what I'm reading out of some book. It is an interpretation of an interpretation. And I don't find that to be a reliable method of determining what's right and wrong. I prefer using more robust, more informed, and more well thought out methodology.
Yeah, I'd like to know, every time somebody tells me that they have an objective moral source and it's God, cool. First of all, as I said before, I'm not convinced that that's necessarily an objective moral source. It's just that you've changed the subject and the subjective from us or me to God. But let's assume that that God has a true standard. And from our point of view, we can point to God's standard and say, because it's not subjective to any of us, God's standard is the standard that we should use, or that there is a standard. First, you have to demonstrate, how do you know what God's standard is? And then you have to demonstrate why we should care what God's standard is. Because if God's standard is, if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination or deserving of death. Well, I reject that is the correct moral position. It may be a God's position, but that doesn't mean that I have to accept it, nor does it mean it's correct. There is no objection to secular moral systems that is in any way solved by appealing to a God. You can say, well, Matt, you just have your opinion about morality. Yes, that's true. I have my opinions about morality. Well, how do you know yours are right? Well, I'm convinced that mine are consistent with the values I set. If you can show where my moral opinions are inconsistent with the values, with my values, that would be a problem and I would correct it. But how do you know your values are right? I don't know what you mean by right. I have certain values. If I say that I'm going to focus on the well-being of humans, then we can then narrow that down to say, what contributes to well-being? Is happiness a part of it? Sure. Is mental stress a part of it? Yes. Is physical pain a part of it? Yes. Should we be avoiding suffering? Yes. What do we do when the suffering of different individuals come in conflict? Aha. Now we've gone from the simple foundations to how to resolve potential conflicts between those. And all the theistic objectors can be like, you've got nothing you can point to other than you. Well, you've got nothing you can point to other than a God that you can't demonstrate. You can't solve the problem. If you and I don't agree on a moral foundation, how do we resolve that? Because if all you're going to do is sit there and say, I'm convinced this is what God wants. Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that's what God wants. I'm not convinced there's a God. But even if I were convinced that there was a God and this is what God wants, we'd still have all of our work in front of us. Because whether I disagree with you or I disagree with God, somebody needs to say, here's why this standard is correct. And what the theist would like to do is say, it's correct because it's God. But that is divine command theory. That is might makes right, which they would reject in any other circumstance. And even if we were to accept that, we still don't know what God thinks. I don't know any way around
And
it.
I can easily imagine a world where a God said the opposite. Like, is it really does come down to whether a God commands something or not. And if you look at the definitions of objective and subjective, objective is independent of a mind, subjective is subject to circumstance or the opinion of somebody. And if God can easily command incest is okay or incest is not okay, then that is entirely up to his opinion, his mind. The God, you're just kicking the can up one level. It is still a subjective opinion about the immorality. Just the source of the subjectivity is changing. That doesn't only change anything, though. So, yeah. And on top of that, too, like, you got to prove that God exists and the God actually wrote, inspired the Bible. And you have a huge mountain of obstacles to overcome before at all that's taken seriously.
I should have asked whether a half sister counted.
Because I would say, in fact, this actually illustrates the point. Let's say we have two step siblings, right? Two step siblings, they're not related. Genes have nothing to do with it, but they were raised in the same household and one groomed the other for a sexual relationship. I would call that immoral. This is a non-incestuous couple, but grooming occurred. That's immoral. So the incestuousness or non-incestuousness of the relationship has nothing to do with the morality of it. It really comes down to what harm is being done. And in this case, my example, grooming is occurring. That's a harm. That's a bad thing. That's immoral.
Yeah.
So hopefully John can look back and listen to that conversation on his own. Hopefully see the nuance and the context around what we're explaining, and not just latch on to sentences that are convenient for whatever TikTok sound clip he's trying to create. Because a real conversation was had there, even though there was a lot of yelling and stuff. But like, I think anybody who is genuinely interested on whether or not this is moral or immoral, outside of what does my favorite God think about it, could learn a lot from that conversation. And I really hope John does take a moment to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to honestly approach what these guys are saying and really analyze it and really try to take them at their word and take them at that they are engaging with me in good faith and they are genuinely believing what they're saying and they have reasons for saying it. Because John, if you can understand that that's the point of view that we're at here, or that's the position we're coming from, hopefully you can engage with the material better. Please do that.
It's strange because for the people who claim that there's an objective standard based on God, the best they can do is probably point to the Bible. And I'd point out that in that section in Leviticus, chapter 18, verse 9, says essentially that you're not supposed to have sex with either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter. So you can't have sex with your sisters and half-sisters. And yet, Sarah was Abraham's half-sister. Not only had sex with her, married her, and this phrasing some people are going to find problematic, but I'd say pimped her out as well, on the basis that she was his sister and not his wife, even though she was his wife and his sister.
That's a great point.
But now here's the best apologetic for that. The Leviticus rules come after Abraham and Sarah. And so it didn't apply back then. Just like the rules about incest came after Cain and Abel. So if they were definitely having sex with their sisters and marrying their sisters, if in fact Adam and Eve were the beginners of all it, or to say it's not actually literal, but then you get down to Abraham and Sarah, and I don't know what case you're going to make that's not literal.
Yeah, and in which case, God's dictate on whether incest is right or wrong is subject to the time in which the incest takes place. So there's context there, like same type of context we're trying to show John in our examples.
Yeah, we got two more calls. to get to today before we wrap things up, but we've got Elijah in Texas, pronouns are he, him, who wants to talk about atheists and foxholes. So Elijah, you're on with Matt and Eric, unless you only wanted to talk to one of us.
I'll talk to both of you. I'm just curious why 99% of federal prisoners are religious, if you can answer that. And if you went to federal prison for, let's say, 30 years, do you think you'd be strong enough mentally to not do that?
So where did you get the statistic that 99% of people in federal prisons are religious?
That's in the Google.
That's from the Google.
Just Google it. It's literally the first thing that comes up. Just fucking Google it.
It's not the AI generated Google, right?
Literally,
it's an actual result.
Literally the first result.
The first result for what? Because I did religiosity in prison, and that's not the first result.
It's from the Bureau of Prisons, so it's literally from the BOP.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So
could we just go with what I'm saying is true for now? Because the number is definitely high. You don't dispute that.
I can generally agree that a majority of inmates are Christian in the United States. I can just roll with it.
Hang on.
Not even.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. You're saying that the overwhelming majority of people in prison are religious. Does that mean that religious people are more prone to crime than non-religious people?
No, the majority of them probably come to their religion after.
Does that mean that religious people are more likely to get caught doing crime than non-religious people?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Does it mean that people may have an incentive in the prison system to adopt religion or claim they adopt religion?
No.
There's no incentive in the prison system for people to adopt religion or claim they adopt religion. You don't think that whether or not you're likely to get parole if you claim that you've had a religious conversion and are now following and practicing a religion that prohibits your former actions, you don't think that's a factor in people stating their religiosity?
No.
Okay. Well, what's your point? Because you're obviously an idiot. So what's your point you want to get to?
Well,
Elijah, in courts, hold on, Elijah. In courts, we see judges making bad judgments saying, oh, this man found God. This man's a Christian. This man has a good, long history of being a dedicated priest or pastor in his church. So I'm gonna lower the sentence for this perpetrator. You don't think the same thing happens on parole boards?
No. Because let's look at like
Elijah's not serious. Elijah's not serious. No. Elijah, get to the argument that you really want your soundbite for, so I can be done with you.
Okay, no, we'll just go back to look at life prisoners because they have zero chance at parole. They are still religious to a high extent. So explain that.
Yeah. It's not all about parole. It's about treatment from the guards and other things as well. But in any case. What you called in supposedly about something about no atheists in foxholes. Can you get to your point so that I can dismiss you?
No, I'm just curious. What kind of secrets you have that you would you'd be super tough in prison to avoid actually becoming religious if you had a life sentence? Like, what would you do?
So, first of all, this has nothing to do with the stated question that you were going to ask about atheists in foxholes. But did I say that I wouldn't become? Did I say that I wouldn't become religious in prison?
Tell me, would you?
No, I fucking didn't. So why are you assuming from a smug prick condescending accusation that I said something that I didn't say?
So you would become religious in prison.
Did I say that I would become religious? Elijah, are you capable are you capable of having an honest conversation? Because I neither said I would become religious nor that I wouldn't. So why are you? No, sir, you are a dishonest interlocutor. Ask the question.
Would you become religious if you had a life sentence?
No, but I would become a religious follower if I were convinced that the religion were true and worthy of following.
Okay, that's not what I am.
Yeah, Elijah, this feels more like
that's what you get to ask now, bitch.
Elijah, this feels like more of an attack on our supposed integrity about our positions rather than whether there are not atheists in foxholes or whether or not the majority of the population of prison is actually Christian. Are you trying to tell us that we'll fold and collapse like a house of cards under stress and proclaim belief in a God?
Oh, he's muted. I have to unmute.
Oh, okay.
That's
So,
what I'm asking you guys.
So Elijah, if somebody's literally holding a gun to my head and says, profess faith in Jesus or I'm going to blow your brains out, I'm going to fucking profess faith in Jesus. I might not actually think it. I might be lying.
Hallelujah.
Okay. I will lie to preserve my life. I will lie to preserve my life in certain circumstances.
Okay.
Now, does that mean that?
Okay,
now,
there you go.
Hold on. Does that mean that if I get put in prison on a life sentence, that I'm going to convert to Christianity, at least just on the superficial level? I have no idea. I doubt it. But you can probably contrive a super esoteric hypothesis where I might actually do that. If somebody's threatening my life in prison, yeah, sure, I'm a Christian. Sure, don't kill me. Why not?
Okay. I've never seen a case where that's actually happened ever once. So
I haven't
you can
either.
point me to that.
I've never heard you say anything that was actually useful or thoughtful or honest, Elijah. You want to point me to that?
I suspect this is just an attack on our integrity. And Elijah, I will tell you, I will lie under certain circumstances.
I just asked you for something that you've ever said that was useful, productive, or honest, and you said, yeah, why did you spend an hour talking about incest? How does that point to anything that you've ever said that was useful, productive, or honest?
You changing the subject. So answer it.
I'm sorry. Are you changing the subject again now that I've asked you twice, 2 questions now back to back, and you've refused to answer both of them? You're accusing me of changing the subject when I literally answered your question. Are you capable of being honest, Elijah?
Are you?
Yes.
Would you? Okay, so answer me then. You still have not answered my original question. If you got locked up, let's say for a life sentence, okay, because you did something crazy, what would you turn? What would you turn to?
That is not the question you've asked. You've never asked that question until right fucking now. Before, you asked me whether or not I would convert to a religion, and I answered that, and I answered it with no. I would only convert to a religion if I were convinced it were true and deserving that. But now you're asking, if I were to get locked up, what would I turn to? I don't know what you mean. What would I turn to for what?
Because like I explained, most inmates, and this is not just for free wine, for free.
What would I turn to for what? What would I turn to for what?
For mental comfort, like most inmates need.
I don't need to turn to anything else for mental comfort.
That's very funny because you haven't been locked up for life in prison, so it's easy to say that.
I don't know what it's going to be like for life in prison. So if you're, and ask me a hypothetical, are you so stupid that you're not aware that when you ask someone a hypothetical, they must judge it based on their current understanding of that and not on what will actually happen? Try talking over me. See how fucking good that goes for you, Elijah. Does it go well for anybody else? Ever?
Continue.
I'm done. I asked you what I would need. You asked me what I would turn to, and I said for what? And you said for comfort to ease my mind, and I said I don't need any more of that. And you said I don't know because I haven't been locked up yet, which I acknowledged. I don't know what I'm going to be like in that situation. What's your next question, genius?
My point is,
what's your next question? What's your next question?
My question is, how do you know that you've been in a deep enough foxhole?
I don't know that I've been in a deep enough foxhole. Why does the depth of the foxhole, there I go. God, you're so stupid. Why does the depth of the foxhole have any bearing on whether or not converting to a religion is reasonable?
It doesn't. I'm just saying you would turn, it doesn't mean it's reasonable.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye. What is up with all the trolls? It's like we couldn't get real callers today, and so it was just trolls. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, that was difficult.
How do you know you haven't been in a deep enough foxhole yet?
Yeah,
I don't.
Because hypothetically, you can go either way. You can contrive of an extreme hypothetical situation where the pressure just builds and builds and builds. And you keep on asking the question, would you convert to Christianity then? Would you convert to Christianity then? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea I don't have no idea how I would hold up under such extreme circumstances. I think anybody can be pushed to the breaking point and start doing crazy things or insane things once they're pushed far enough. And that road goes both directions. I could easily, with lost his name, Elijah, I think. I could easily say, okay, Elijah, let's start contriving hypotheticals that would get you to denounce your Christianity. How much pain and suffering and loss would you have to endure in order for you to give that up? Like, we can push the envelope both directions, and it doesn't really tell us anything about things. Sure, I could be coerced into all kinds of things if the situation was extreme enough. I'm not some bastion of integrity and everything like that. I'm just a human. You are just a human. Matt's just a human. We have breaking points. Now, if I do get pushed in an extreme circumstance to the point where I say, yeah, I believe in Jesus, and I could even really mean it, that's not a justification for the belief. That's not good reason to believe. I could be broken to that point and genuinely believe, and that still doesn't prove the truth of Christianity or the truth of Jesus.
Yeah, how sad that the best case Elijah could make for the religion that he's advocating for is, well, you guys just haven't been beaten and punished and had enough bad things wrong, because once enough stuff goes wrong, that's when you turn to God. Oh, really? Why would that be when I turn to God? Because I've tried turning to everything else and nothing else is left. But even if I turn to God, where's the demonstration that there's a God to turn to?
Yeah.
If you can only get there when you've essentially been nearly slaughtered and are at death's door, what fucking kind of God do you worship? What weak and feeble God is playing the world's greatest game of hide and seek and is only going to show up when things are really, really bad, which is a bad that he planned? It's just weird.
Yeah. And an intelligent, reasonable God would understand that it does not follow that a broken human accepting you is justification, that human now has a good reason to believe in you. That doesn't follow. An intelligent God would realize that. An intelligent, caring God would not use that method or mechanism to convert people to believe in him. That God would do something else.
As somebody in chat pointed out, I've literally faced death. I've literally had heart attacks and gone in for a triple bypass. Not only that, I served 8.5 years in the military, including locations where there was the potential to die. I didn't turn to God in either of those. So how much worse do things have to get? I can be reasonably confident in my mental integrity that I'm not going to just turn to a God because things are really bad, because things have been literally as bad as they could be. Or I guess the only way it could have been worse is if there wasn't someone to do the operation. That could have potentially been worse. Because, I could have been in a position like Dave Warnock is in, where Dave has an incurable illness and will die, and is currently unable to do the shows that he used to do here and everything else. Dave's not turning to God. But what if he did? What if my friend, who believes in death with dignity, who believes in the science, who's done a show here and talked about this many times, what if my friend called me tomorrow and said, I just can't take anymore, Matt. I can't take anymore. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too bad. I'm turning to God. I'm going back to my former religion, or I've found some new religion. I'm turning to God. What would I say? I'd say, Dave, do you have good reason to believe it's true, or are you doing it because it makes you feel better? If he's got good reason to think it's true, I might join him. If he's doing it just to make it feel better, I'm going to give him a hug and say, you face death however you face death. Because Dave turning to whatever religion or God doesn't in any way testify to the truth of that God. This cartoon caller that we get, I don't believe you're real. I have more respect for the integrity of Christians and theists in general than I could possibly have for the fake callers who have been calling in and trolling about nonsense. I hope you got the content you're looking for, because if you were theists, you were an embarrassment to the God that you're advocating for. And if you're not theists, you should have just come out and said, yep, I'm an atheist, plain a joke, so that Eric and I could both say, stop doing that. You're making the rest of us look like idiots, and you're making this look bad for the rest of us. Some of us genuinely care about this stuff. Some of us have faced death, you little punk. And at no point was I anywhere near reaching out to a God. And every single person in the room, right up until they put me under, can attest to that. Because I was laughing and joking and trying to keep it light for the people around me who I knew were terrified that I might not come out of that operating room. And how would they then have to do with it? I wasn't terrified, because I'm pretty sure if I hadn't come out of that operating room, that's just it. They'd have put me out, and then there'd be nothing else of me. I'm not going to suffer anymore. The only thing that worried me was how Brad and Arden were going to take it. How the people I care about were going to actually deal with me being gone. I hope that after some initial sadness, they actually enjoyed it, had a good time, throw a party, have a funeral. I don't mind. I'm fucking dead. And if I'm rotting in some hell, how much cooler is it going to be if I find myself rotting in a hell, knowing that people are still up there celebrating the good that I did and the person that I was? Ha 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 ha. You want to punish me forever because I didn't buy into your nonsense? Well, if you take away my mind, you're no longer punishing me. And if you don't take away my mind, you can't punish me, because I can live in here, and I can live here knowing that I had a good life, and that there were people who I loved and people who I valued and people who loved and valued me. And while you may inflict all kinds of pain and you may put so much trauma to where I become just catatonic for eternity, oh well, I was still right. And God was a thug. Last call for today.
Amen.
Kathy in Illinois, who's been waiting for nearly 2 hours. Welcome.
Oh, but I've been enjoying the nearly 2 hours. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I liked it when I got to play chess and Eric talked for quite a while. That was fun.
Yeah, well, it might have been fun for you, but it was pretty, I mean, those people that were on there, they're arrogant, how I see it.
Yeah. The thing though.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Eric. Yeah.
Yep. Hey, Kathy. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, I'm just calling because I've been going to a Universalist Unitarian church, and they are about respecting others' beliefs, which is going to mean people who have a God that they believe in. But I see it as very open-minded. For one thing, I mean, we partake in activism, and like, you know, our theme this year is for racial equity and environmental justice. You know, I mean, the services are kind of like meditation, or, you know, agreeing on the kind of values that we all have in common. And so I've heard you say, Matt, some things about, like, for example, how you feel like, you know, celebrating Christmas is it can be a good thing, you know. And I've been paying attention to you since 2007, and plus all of the videos before that. So I just kind of wanted to hear you or Eric what you think about encouraging some people to come to the church. And I will, you know, openly say, and there are many who will openly say they are atheists or humanists.
I'll give you my thoughts real quick. I'm more interested in Eric's, mainly because I know my thoughts, and I've said them many times before. I am generally speaking a fan of Christmas, but I'm more a fan of going along with my partner. And so if my partner's not that much of a fan of Christmas, I don't miss out on anything. When it comes to Unitarian Universalists, some of the stuff you're talking about are the reasons I'm not attending a Unitarian Universalist church. But I also have no problem with anybody who is, Well, that's not true. I probably don't have much of a problem with anybody who's attending a UU church. And I can appreciate the fact that they are building kind of respectable, respectful communities that are inclusive. I just have a really low personal tolerance for woo and bullshit, and so I can't. But I don't think any of them are actively doing the sort of things that are incredibly problematic. And I'll leave it for Eric.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm pretty much I'm pretty much in alignment there. I mean, if you found something that you're benefiting from and no harm's being done to you or others, then all the power to you. Now, if you were starting from scratch and you're asking me for my opinions on whether you should go to a church or not, I would probably say I think you should explore secular options first, like community groups, meetups, finding groups of people that have the same goals and a support circle and needs as you do, without the religious baggage attached to it. But if you're already there at the UU and you're enjoying it and nobody's coming to harm, then I got nothing against it. I can maybe nitpick and say, well, you're supporting a church and churches generally support like a rational thought, and that can like have some downstream harm. But I can do a preponderance of harm versus good and go, you're getting way more good out of this than I can really reasonably expect harm to come out of it. So sure, why not go for it? I mean, you're good in my book.
yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I was kind of looking for confirmation from people like you that I consider experts on the psychology of, you know. I mean, I'm good. You know, I'm all right for myself. I just wondered about, you know, trying to convince some especially some young people. I mean, I am part of some groups already that, you know, we do activism, workers' rights, human rights, racial, you know, all kinds of support, women's rights, LGBTQ and trans rights, you know, and all of that is coming out of this particular congregation. And some of us are like, I wish we could change the C in our church's name to congregation, or something else, community or something,
Yeah.
because there are many of us who, you know, we can't stand the, you know, the Christian. Well, what it is we're taking text from many of the other books that are, you know, for God. And our idea of God, at least from my understanding, is more like motivation, our personal motivations. And like I said, you know, we do meditation. I don't even go, if it's not my turn to play the accompaniment of the hymns, this is what I do. But anyway, I appreciate your replies, and I'm not surprised. They're a little more positive than the ones I've heard other times when I've asked that question, like on Talk Heathen or Atheist Experience. It was just
Well,
pretty
that's the
much very
problem.
negative.
You're listening to the wrong shows.
Yeah, you said it. That's right. No, this is good. This has been good. Good afternoon to come on your show. I mean, listen to your show, despite some of the negativity from the other side. But anyway.
Now it's all good. I can toss negativity right back, but thanks so much, Kathy. And by the way, keep working with anybody who's willing to do good. I've worked with plenty of people who I disagree with strongly on all sorts of things related to religion or politics or whatever, if we're working together for the common good. And so if you've got a community that's truly a community, I get the frustration with the word church. It's one of the reasons why I wasn't a fan of the North Texas Church of Free Thought, because church is a specifically not just even Christian, but Protestant kind of label. Whereas, you know, Catholics would refer to it mass and you know, Muslims are going to mosques and Jews are going to synagogues. Everybody's got a different label for it. And we're so just generally indoctrinated in the West to the term church that we think it's a truly generic term. And it can be. It's kind of become like Xerox or Kleenex or, you know, that sort of thing, where it was a brand name that became kind of normalized. But I share your objections. However, my objections to church are less impactful than my desire to do good. And so I not only will work in churches, I've preached in churches, secular sermons, and debated in churches. And I've worked right alongside people in churches to help the homeless and work for LGBTQ rights. Yeah. So just keep doing good. It'll all work out in the wash.
And there's also cases where There's also cases where a group may want to get tax exempt status for certain benefits, so they structure themselves in a religious like manner and slap the name church or temple, like the Satanic Temple comes to mind. Certain UU churches, I mean, they might be at their core really just secular and interested in helping society out as a whole, but in order to navigate the legal and political waters of getting the benefits that they need to operate effectively, they could potentially just be using the name and name only and just getting the benefits out of that. In which case, I have no problem with that either. Like, sure, navigate the legal waters as you please.
Kathy, I got to let you go, but I thank you for the call.
Okay, sure.
Thanks so much.
Okay, guys.
Yep.
I posted a link in chat. Go ahead.
Isn't the 4:00 show starting soon? We're going long, right? It's at 4:00 today, right? Yeah. Okay. I won't stop you.
I got right. Well, actually, so it's not the 4:00 show. It'd be the 5:00 show where you are. So
that was 4:00. Okay.
In any case,
right, just
I posted
ignore me. It's fine.
I posted a link to the YouTube thing of the fundraiser that we did yesterday. The current total sits at $67,884 and no cents, even though I think Jimmy said there were 93 cents. You can go over there. Mods can repost that link in there. But it's right here on the Line Network as a incredibly lengthy, 10 hours, 16 minutes and 44 seconds thing that we did yesterday. There were lots of cool discussions and some fun stuff. And then there was a lot of just give us your money, give us your money, give us your money, because we're giving all of it, 100% of it, to Recovering from Religion. This fundraiser is going to go on for 5 more days. That there will still be that donate there at that YouTube video link. You can also go to paypal.me/RFR.org if you are out of the country. But please include a note that it's part of the event so that it can get added to the total. There are, the rest of those are the support production links there. We did an amazingly good job this weekend. I don't mean me and Eric today on the Sunday show. Eric was awesome today. I was a little more rascally. But Recovering from Religion is an incredibly important organization. We talked a lot about it. We've had volunteers on. We've had guests on. This fundraiser is going to keep going. Right now, because we hit the 40,000 goal, I'm getting a tattoo. Because we hit the 65,000 goal, I bare-handled a snake that almost certainly was going to bite me, although it didn't. So I don't know what to say about that. But even though the second goal was $50,000 and we've already exceeded it by 17, there are 5 days left. And I hope that people continue to go back and watch that. Here's some of the stories about how important it is. I'd like to see us over 5 days. That should be able to easily get to 70, if not 75. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not trying to tap into and over tap into our regular audience. We are incredibly humbled by the general generosity of people who were participating in that fundraiser for Recovering from Religion. And we greatly appreciate people tuning in, watching, calling, clicking like, clicking subscribe, joining the channel, going to patreon.com/calltheline to continue to support this network. Your support for this network is what allows us to do things like the fundraiser yesterday. It allows us to reach out and help organizations like that. It also, fair point, is now my primary source of income. So the shows on this channel are now slightly more important, or at least equally important with my own Patreon stuff, although my own channel is going to be actually bringing in money as well, because I got healthcare bills to pay. I'm the guy that's had the triple bypass. I'm doing great, by the way. Look, there's like a little, you can see just a little bit of pink right there after a couple years. Doing good. Just remember, the biggest reasons that people are leaving religions, while they should be, ideally, in a pristine world, academic and intellectual, that ain't it. People are leaving because, or people are staying because they want the community and they're not sure they're going to find community outside of there. People are leaving because of personal conflicts between their own internal perception of what is good and right in the world and what a particular church says. People leave for different reasons, and nobody is guaranteed to be immune from needing assistance, somebody to talk to, some community group to interact with when they get out. And until they get to a point where they feel comfortable going out and interacting with a group, being able to reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org in either an online chat or a phone call with a trained volunteer may be the most important thing that's going to happen to them in their life, in their deconstruction, and in their struggle to find their way free and recover from religion. Please consider donating. Please consider volunteering. Please continue to support the line. We'll be back in an hour and 12 minutes with tonight's guest for the Sunday show, After Dark. Thank you to Morgan for producing, to all of our moderators for knocking out all of those pesky little, trolls in there. We'll see you in a little while. Bye-bye. Oops. Erika and I can't get in alignment because we're not hearing the music at the same time.